Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Outlaw Nation Show here on the Outlaw Nation YouTube channel. I am the Outlaw John Rocha. Thank you all so much for taking the time to jump in and watch us live on this show here today. I'm excited for our guest that we have tonight, a friend for quite some time. And also, you all know we do a podcast called the CineFiles. We've been doing that for quite some time, the last few years. We've covered so many movies in our time together, gone up and down the range of the kind of movies we've covered. And of course, we've had great interactions with you all as fans as well. But before we get to Steve Morris, that is my guest tonight, let's cover some business here on the Outlaw Nation channel. First of all, thank you all so much for those of you who signed up in the last 24 hours. I always appreciate you all coming aboard the Outlaw Nation train. For those who subscribe to the channel here, Charlene Nolan 86, Ahmad Yakub, Jason McDonald, and Austin Harvey. Thank you all so much for subscribing to the Outlaw Nation channel. Always appreciate the love and support. Today, I dropped an interview that I did for the Deep Cut. It's with this British actor named James Norton. He is an incredible actor. Very nice guy. We talked for like an hour and 20 minutes. We had that time difference. He was in the UK. I'm here in LA, and he just gave me so much extra time. We talked about his new film that's out now called Mr. Jones, which is based on the life of Gareth Jones, a gentleman who was a reporter, a Welsh reporter there in the UK, who discovered what Stalin was doing in the Ukraine. I think the Homordor, I think is what it's called, where he was essentially starving the farmers there. At millions and millions of farmers were being starved there, and he plays the reporter who discovered this, and of course, subsequently, unfortunately, passed away on assignment. And there were rumors that the Russians were involved in that at that time. So a great interview. We also talked about he's currently in the middle of working with Joss Whedon on The Nevers on HBO. We also talked about his work recently with Happy Valley. He played that villain Tommy Lee Royce. And McMafia is a film or a show that we talked about a little bit, but also we got into the fact that he might be James Bond. There's a lot of looking at William Hill, who does the bets and the odds there in the UK. He is now the odds-on favorite to become James Bond. So if there's a feather in the cap for the Outlaw Nation this early in building up this channel, it's that I potentially just interviewed the next James Bond. And I'll be dropping little snippets of the interview over the next few days, but the entire interview is available now to go watch after maybe you watch this show, or tomorrow. Take it with you July 4th and listen to it in podcast form, which I'll be dropping tomorrow as well in the Outlaw Nation podcast feed. That's another thing. If you haven't subscribed to the Outlaw Nation podcast feed, please do so. All of our shows, except for the Geek Buddies, show up on the Outlaw Nation podcast feed, and that includes the Patreon shows. And speaking of the Patreon shows, tomorrow we'll be dropping the first episode of the OK Corral. Chris Aikman and Colin Martinez, two of my Outlaw Nation patrons, went at each other over 3 statements about the Batman franchise. I hosted it with my producer Sean Barreto coming in, offering advice, counting down as well, and discussing who won, who lost. So that'll be up tomorrow. Thanks to Wiley Todd, who is the producer of this show, for doing the graphics for that. So look for that tomorrow morning. And I think that's pretty much everything. Oh, a new episode of the Top 10 show dropped today as well. If you haven't listened to that podcast episode, we got it up there. What is it? Top 10? Well, I can't remember what it is today, but I record so many shows. I should have had it at the ready. What did we drop today? Me and Matt Nost. Do I have it up here? Oh, I guess I got to look for it here. Oh, no, wait, no, we had, that was April. Let me look up Matt Nost, and I'll tell you what the subject is. Because like I said, we do so many of these things. It goes out of my mind half the time when he's doing it. I know Matt always tweets about it. I didn't tweet about it this morning. Oh, yeah. So we talked today. We counted down the top 10 billion-dollar grossing movies, top 10 billion-dollar grossing movies. So that is up there for you to enjoy as well. But that is not what we are here to talk about tonight. Oh, one last thing. Game Time. Now, if you didn't watch Game Time on Monday, yesterday, we had a grand old time talking about all the sports news, but we also, because of Cam Newton going to the New England Patriots, we talked about questionable fashion sense in our lives, and all three of us put up some of the worst pictures of us of clothes and our fashion sense at the time. Pretty embarrassing stuff. So if you want to see us roast each other, you can go and watch that a little after you watch this show for sure. So a lot going on the Outlaw Nation channel, a lot happening here, and I'm looking forward to bringing it all to you. And again, thank you all so much for joining me live. Now, as I was about to say, but that is not the reason we are here tonight. The reason we are here tonight is to talk with my friend of quite some time, of quite a few years, my co-host of the CineFiles podcast, and a director, writer, and producer here in Los Angeles. He teaches directing here in Los Angeles as well. We've had numerous conversations about film, about life, about philosophy, about the world, all of it. And a lot of you really enjoyed the episodes I did back when the Outlaw Nation was a podcast with this gentleman here. You really enjoyed his insight. You really enjoyed his point of view on the world. And so many of you have been clamoring for me to bring Steve Morris on to the Outlaw Nation show in its current iteration here on my YouTube channel. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome Steve Morris to the Outlaw Nation show. How are you, Steve?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I love the Outlaw Nation. I've been a citizen for almost as long as anybody.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, the first people to buy property in the Outlaw Nation, I was quite humbled by that. So thank you so much, Steve.
Well, the real estate value was low. It was an incredible investment.
That's for sure. Let me give you your proper credentials here. Where is it at here? Let me put you under. There we go. That's right. There he is. If you want to follow Steve, you can follow Steve there right now and look above. Both patrons are up here. Our Patreon for me, the John Rocha, is right above, and the Patreon above Steve is our Patreon for the Cinephile. So if you haven't signed up for that, definitely do that. And also tonight, we will be taking your questions as we go along. You know, send in your super chats, send in your Streamlabs. I don't have a Schmoebot, but please send in your $20 donations and we could talk about whatever. Also, if you want to, we come in live a little bit later. If you're a patron already, you can start coming in live. Wiley Todd has the link. He will put it in the chat, or he will put it in the Discord. For anybody who's a patron of the Outlaw Nation show, you can come in first and ask your questions first. And as the show goes along, we'll start bringing in people who are non-patrons to ask questions live of us as well. So sit back and relax. This is going to be a fun one. Steve, where are you at right now in your world? What is happening in your life right now? Give us an update. Where are you at emotionally, mentally, physically? What is going on for you, my man?
That's where we're going to start. I'll tell you what I think. Talking to a lot of people, you know, we've all been in quarantine for a long time. And here's what I figured out. It's hard on everybody, and it's hard in a totally different way.
Yeah.
Like some people miss going out and seeing people. Some people feel trapped. Some people, you know, have run through every single Netflix movie they could possibly think of.
Yep.
For me, it's weird because one thing I didn't really understand until this happened is how much of my life I spend alone.
Oh,
is that I'm an introvert and I spend so much time because, you know, I work. This is my office. I've edited films in here. I've written screenplays in here. We do the podcast in here. I edit the podcast in here, and I go on walks, and I like to think, and I listen to lots of books. And I've been trapped with these two other people for many, many months. And so
is trapped the word you want to use?
Yes. They're lovely people, my wife and my son, who I adore. But it took a while to go like, why am I so stressed all the time? Yeah. And I haven't been alone. I haven't had a chance to think, you know? And my wife really, for her, it's the opposite. She wants to see people. She wants to be with people. And I'm like, I need to get away. And I think just now in the last month or so, I've sort of found the rhythm of, you know, I walk for an hour every day. I live in really steep hills. So I go up and down really steep hills for an hour every day. Nice. I carve out time for myself and, you know, but homeschooling and, you know, doing all that stuff, it's hard.
Yeah. I mean, self-care is really important during this time. I agree with you. Lily and I, you know, when one of us needs space, we say it. We'll go into the other room, or, you know, I gave her I let her have the bigger office. So she has like a space to go to. I can come into the smaller office, which I've built here with the Outlaw Nation Studios, and just watch my shows or play my video games. And neither one of us judges the other for taking that time. It's like that's been the thing that's helped both of us, is to not get on each other's nerves. Is that when we don't want to be around each other, we can just say that to each other and go off into the other place, and that's really helped both of us at times. But it doesn't mean that there hasn't been moments. Lord God, I mean, who can do that? You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I think that's the if there's any lesson, well, there's a lot of lessons about everything that's happened in the world lately, but
true.
But personally, for at least me and Karen, is what is it that you need? And we've become much more. There was a time when it was like, well, I kind of want this, but it's okay. Maybe I'll get it next time. And now it's like, no, I need to go do this. Then you have to go do it. And that's it. You know, it's just things are too complicated. Things are too stressful to worry about that kind of stuff right now.
Right. Well, I mean, let's get into the idea of movies here, Steve. I mean, this is something that we've been friends, God, I don't remember how long we've been friends. Certainly since the early 2000s, maybe.
Well, when did you move to LA? What year?
I came to LA in 2000.
Okay. My first memory of you,
yeah.
I mean, I think we probably met a couple of times, but my first memory of you was you coming to a party at my house.
Okay.
And us standing in a circle and playing movie actor movie.
Yeah.
And
movie actor movie, right.
Yeah. And the reason that you stood out was you were good. You know, and so, you know, it's like there were people, you know, I had my friends and I knew where I ranked. So for me, Steve Jones was the best, who's been on the Cinephiles with us.
Yes, he has.
And I was second, and other people were, you know, down below that, until I moved to LA and met this guy, Adam Colite, who you might remember from a long time ago. Yeah. And I met him and I went, ooh, this guy could take on Steve Jones. So I started to set that up. And the night that I met you, Steve was there, Adam was there. And then suddenly this new kid from the East Coast, a hot rookie, came in and started challenging the big boys. I was like, oh, this person is interesting. You had to get to know this guy.
That's a fair point. Yeah. I mean, it was, I've always, and that was back in my days when I was uber competitive too. Not like regular competitive like I think I am now. Chill competitive kind of. Back then it was like I would set the world on fire around me if I lost or thought someone was cheating. So yeah, I mean I always prided myself on the fact of knowing a lot about films, knowing a lot about actors. It's always been something that was something that I like depended on and I could hold on to, right? It was sports and movies. These are the two things, and politics to a lesser degree, but certainly sports and movies are the two things that are the paramount interests in my life. And so I like to know that I know a lot about movies. So even back then I was training to be in the Schmodown. Even back then in my head.
Just what I was going to say.
Yeah. So he's doing the movie trivia stuff. Yeah, and so we've been friends a long time, but like we would get into conversations about movies for so many years. And the thing with you is that Steve, for those of you who are watching, Steve was well known for coming up with the Morris questions, which are these random questions that you would get asked at our friends' function. And by the way, Steve can attest, we have like well over 70 friends. We're a huge crew. We roll deep and we roll hard and we roll long. Depending on what we
used to.
Yeah, well, right. People have babies and divorces and marriages and things of that nature.
And quarantines.
Yeah, quarantine. Yeah, right. But like those things, we always get it. And Steve, I always looked forward to like the Morris questions. All right, what do you got? This is challenges. What do you got? What's the philosophical question tonight at 11 o'clock at night, just as the party is maybe either about to wind down or catch a second wind? What's the philosophical question? Like, is it hard to be inside your own mind because you're always coming up with these ideas, or did you plan these ideas before you come to these parties?
Yes.
Okay.
It is hard to be inside my own mind, although I have no experience anywhere else. My mind generally doesn't ever stop, much to the irritation of people closest to me. And I think, you know, it's funny, those Morris questions, because I'm always thinking about it. I think about, you know, from silly kind of what if questions, like if you could only have, you know, one kind of food for the rest of your life, what would it be? Right. Or, you know, those kinds of questions, to sort of deep philosophical ones, to depending on how many drinks are in me, naughty, challenging, make you question your reality sort of question. But I also think, honestly, you know, is that I realized later in life that I have a weird social anxiety, and that's something for me to deal with my own silence. Gotcha. You know, I think is that, the conversation is winding down. It must be my responsibility to start up the conversation again. I better have something good. And so I come up with a question.
Yeah, they would always throw us for a loop, always left us like having these longer discussions and interesting discussions about the world. And, you know, it's just the thing. When did movies get their hooks in you, man? Like, how early was your connection to film built?
I think it's a process, really. You know, I was home a lot and watched a lot of TV, as you know. And really planned my day as much as I could by like what shows were on. And so, and things like comic books, which I read constantly, in books that I read a lot. And so the idea of stories and storytelling was always big. Yeah. But I think I was thinking about this recently, is that I think for me, like there's two big moments. One is when I had those first mind-blowing moments in a movie theater.
Yeah.
The first one that I can think of is Superman, the movie.
Oh yeah.
Because as a comic book guy, and that's 78, so I'm 10 years old, and to see my favorite superhero, which was Superman at the time, up on the big screen, it just blew my mind. You know, and that was shortly followed by Star Wars and Star Trek the Motion Picture and Empire and Raiders of the Lost Ark. And so that's my childhood. And so going to movies became and another one which I know we share is Rocky. Rocky is the first movie to ever make me cry. You know, and so I remember just having these visceral experiences. So that's what got the hook in me. And then I think it's because of my completionist nature. Like once I start a thing, well, I have to read all of the books in that series. I have to see, I mean, you know me, like I'm not good at just going, I'm out. I'm done. And so when I would start to learn about these names of directors, I went, well, I need to see all of their movies. And that's probably high school and college and then graduate school and stuff like that, that I really started to, in a disciplined way, trying to learn about film.
Okay. I like that. Vincent Zawada says, when is Godfather coming? LOL. I love the podcast. So yeah, Steve, I think this might be the number one question we get all the time about the Cinephiles. And by the way, for those of you who are new to the Cinephiles, maybe you don't listen to some of my podcasts, Steve and I co-host a show called the Cinephiles. We started about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years, 4 years ago. Right at the height when I was doing like 35 shows, Steve came to me and said, hey, I have an idea for a show. We originally had another person involved with the show. We were kicking around the idea of calling it, I don't know, what do you think? Because we had those kinds of conversations during our get-togethers as friends with another film friend of ours. But then that kind of impulse died down a little bit. And then Steve came to me one day and said, hey, I want to start this show. I'd like you to be the co-host for the show. Do you want to do the show with me? I'll handle things at the beginning and then we'll decide stuff as we go along. And I was like, well, sure, talking about movies. And if I don't have to have too much responsibility for it, I'll jump on and do it. And it was basically that. And we agreed to basically talk about classic films that from the classic or great films that were at least 10 years old from the time we started the podcast, at least 10 years old. And that has been like occasionally, that line has been occasionally broken, but hardly ever broken.
I think it's only broken once.
Only broken once. But other than that, we have done that. We've kind of, we've built the show, and you listen to our first couple of episodes, and we're just talking about the movie. It wasn't until the kind of found its rhythm as we went along, where Steve started to create this idea of taking it step by step, scene by scene, moment by moment at times, dialogue line by dialogue line, and really investigating what's happening with the camera, with the lighting, with the cinematography, with the costume design. We talk about themes, we talk about meaning, we talk about symbolism, and it's been so much fun to dive in deep into these movies. And it seems like we've got a lot of people who have fallen back in love with films that we talk about or have been introduced to films that we've talked about over the years. So that's the Cinephile show, I think, in a nutshell, unless I've missed something here, Steve.
No, I think you pretty much got it. I mean, we made a couple of rules right at the beginning, one of which is we're there to do movies we love. It's not a negative. It's not a negative show. There are plenty of places out there where you can hear people tearing things down, and we didn't want to do that. One of the rules that we decided is people are not there to talk about their own work. Right. So when we have guests, because there's so many shows out there, great ones, where someone comes in to talk about their life and their work and all that stuff. And it was like, well, why do we want to compete in this space? And something that we found was, even when we've had guests who are actors, we had Joe Mantegna on the show, is that they never get to a chance to talk about what they love. About their passions, because they're always asked to talk about their own stuff. And so hearing that, what inspires people, what gets people really excited. And with all of our guests, we always start with sort of the question of well, what movie, just like you asked me, what movie inspired you? What movie got you excited? And we've gotten some really interesting people to come in and talk. And the only other thing I'd say is that the show, anyone who's listened, it's got longer and longer and longer.
Yes,
and so this is a deep dive. If you really want to I want the show to be the definitive conversation about a great film.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
I want, so there's a lot of research, it's a lot of work, and it's something I've become very, very proud of in the last 4 years.
Yes, I know. And I've seen that pride grow with the film. The more you've worked on it, the more time you've spent on it, the effort, the editing, splicing in scenes within the podcast. And that's what I'll tell you. For those of you who haven't maybe tried the CineFiles before, it is, as Steve said, it's a deep dive. Like we did Lawrence of Arabia. It was a 5-hour podcast that we broke up into 2 parts or maybe 3 parts that we did with Rachel Cushing. Yeah, 3 parts that we went deep into. We have guests a lot of the time. They come in with us. Scott Mance has been on the show multiple times. We've done Hard Day's Night, Blade Runner, Star Trek, Wrath of Khan. We recently did 2001: A Space Odyssey. And then we've got, who else has got? Sasha Pearl Raver has been on talking.
Her episodes are great.
Yeah, Pulp Fiction and Chasing Amy was the other one.
Chasing Amy, yeah.
Yeah, we had her on. We've had Michael Vogel on, who may be our most decorated, like our guest who's come on the most to talk about any number of things. We've had Shannon McClung on, the other geek buddy. He's come on recently to talk about Raiders of the Lost Ark and Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. So there've been so many great guests, and yeah, we take this deep dive into stuff and explore films, really just all the minutia as well as the larger stuff going on in the film, because it kind of shows our love of the movie to put that much time and dedication and effort into it. So it's not just 2 guys sitting around talking about a movie. It really is exploring the technical aspect and the emotional aspect, and as I said, the meanings and themes and ideas behind the film and its legacy. And then we cut in dialogue or scenes that we're talking about so that you as the viewer are essentially re-experiencing the movie as we're experiencing the movie again, going through it. So it's a way to make it very interactive without you all actually chiming in. And so many people have said that they've wanted to call us up or send us email. Sometimes they'll immediately send us an email or send us a tweet telling us what they think about what we said about a movie.
Well, it really did evolve out of you and I liking to talk about movies.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that was unexpected, but was really interesting, was that the more we went moment by moment, the more we had discussions that we would have never had any other way. Because when most people talk about films, and these are films, Jaws or Citizen Kane or Lawrence of Arabia, as you said, or The Big Lebowski, these are films that have been talked about over and over and over again. But what people tend to do is they talk about the big moments. And so they all talk. So in Jaws, they all talk about Chrissy going swimming. They all talk about the USS Indianapolis scene. They all talk about the big final action sequence. Everyone talks about those things, and those are great scenes. Yeah. But by going moment by moment, scene by scene, we get to think about and talk about all this other stuff that I don't think anyone's talked about in the way that we have before.
Yeah.
And those conversations go from the very technical, like in Jaws, how John Williams's leitmotifs are supporting the story and driving the emotion forward, to also speculation about, well, what are these characters in Jaws? What are their motivations? What are their histories? What is the scar that Roy Scheider doesn't talk about, but lifts up that's on his side? All these little bits allow us to explore in a different way. And the other thing that happens, we laugh a lot.
Yes, we do.
And sometimes we cry, man. When we did Field of Dreams, I had a real hard time saying, Dad, want to have a catch, because those things were so special to us, and so important. And we shared our own stories about our fathers and our own stories about how we reconciled those things. And, it's a very, very personal show.
Yeah, because movies are very personal to both of us. Movies have really decorated our lives. We have kind of similar upbringings, having, tough fathers and trying to kind of figure out our ways in the world, and how movies have been an escape for both of us when things have been tough or good or sad or great or whatever. Movies have always offered us an emotional release, an intelligent release, with some of the more philosophical movies that you and I have experienced separately in our lives and then talked about on the show itself. We've explored so much about our love, and we haven't even scratched the surface, I believe, of the amount of movies that both of us enjoy and love. And we've been doing the show nonstop almost for 4 years. Yeah. And that's insane to think about.
The one other thing I'll say about the show, and I see people in the chat who've mentioned some of my favorite episodes, like Grapes of Wrath and Civil War, and someone mentioned the Field of Dreams episode. Those are all some of my favorites too. The one other thing that we've tried really hard to do is that we're trying not to get locked into any genre or any era. We've done movies all the way back to the silent era with Buster Keaton, but we've also done guilty pleasures like Con Air and Armageddon. We've done kung fu movies and horror films, and tried to give all of those films the same level of respect, even if they're not, Con Air is not Citizen Kane. I'm going to tell you that right now. But there's reasons why we like Con Air. Yeah. And that was a lot of fun to talk about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We got a super chat here from Paul. He said, to you guys, what film most defines the tumultuous time we're all living in right now in this moment? Great question. Great question. Steve, do you have an answer for this one?
There's one that's top of everything else.
Okay.
Do the Right Thing.
Wow. Yeah. For right now. Yeah. That's a great point. Please expound on that. Why do you think it is?
Do the Right Thing is a story about dealing with race in a highly pressurized moment in a neighborhood. It deals with race in an extremely frank and extremely honest and difficult way. It involves a riot after the killing of African-American by the police. And I think it is a movie that doesn't shy away from difficult situations, and it certainly doesn't give us any simple answers. Right. So I think that one, in terms of the protests and things that are going on right now, I think that is extremely prescient.
I think that's a fantastic choice, and I have to echo the sentiments of my friend here because I agree with that completely. Because again, this is a situation. Look, as much as that cop put his knee on George Floyd, he kept it there for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. It's mind blowing to think about. And you look at was he intending to or not? I don't know, but you look at the situation in 1980 in Do the Right Thing from 1989. That cop is nervous and scared and frustrated, and he is holding on to Radio Raheem longer than he should. And then the moment happens, and you're like, "Wow, this situation is not as simple as black and white. This man didn't intend to necessarily kill Radio Raheem, but he still did it. So what's your feelings about it?" Then you bring up the age-old stuff with the idea of police and how the police treated black protesters in the South. You saw the hoses being turned on them by George Wallace and Bull Moose, what's his name? Whatever his name was. Connor. Bull Connor turning his hoses. So all of that comes storming back in that scene with Ruby Dee crying. That's generations of pain as a black woman crying from the things she has witnessed and seeing it come back again in her own neighborhood. So absolutely so many people around this country now confronting this thing once and for all. And I mean, 30 days of protest, Steve. Every day there has been a protest in some city across this country, and multiple protests really every day to kind of bring this attention in the foreground. And what I'm starting to hear now, I want your thoughts on this, because look, we're going to go all over the place. It's a wide open conversation here with my man, Steve Morris. One of these things that I'm starting to hear from a couple of my black friends recently that were just on the show here with Game Time to me yesterday. Yeah, we joked about each other's fashion sense, but we also got into this idea of Bubba Wallace and the noose and this idea of like Black Lives Matter. It seems to be that like everybody is doing all this other stuff except what Black Lives Matter was about, which is the destruction of systemic racism within the society and the police. Nobody in Black Lives Matter is protesting so Jenny Slate doesn't voice over a person of color. Nobody in Black Lives Matter is protesting so that, Bubba Wallace doesn't have. They're protesting to get the change of systemic racism here. They don't want you to take down blackface episodes. They want this change, but it seems like everything else is changing except for the thing they actually are marching about to have change. What do you think about that?
I think that is a very complicated question.
I've never known you to shy away from one.
Here's what I think. I think that the first thing that we have to understand about the phrase systemic racism is it refers to a system. Is that it doesn't refer to individual people or individual things. While there might be individual racists within that system, I'm talking about, for instance, the police officer that murdered George Floyd. I mean, that's certainly an individual event that we want to talk about. But but systemic racism means that it's so hard-boiled, it's so baked into our system at almost every level. And so what I think is happening and what you're alluding to is that we're lashing out at all these individual things, trying to knock down little things at a time. To go, oh, well, maybe if we can solve that one, we get rid of that noose, we take down that blackface episode, we tear down this statue, that each of those little things are symbolic of systemic racism. But in fact, they are not systemic racism. It's such a deeper problem. And it is a problem that, 450 years, you know, or 1619 is when slaves first came to the United States. And so, you know, that's a long time to build these things in. And I think part of what is difficult is that what will happen is you'll point to that individual thing, that blackface episode, that noose that's hung up, and then someone else will come up with an explanation. Oh, that noose it's not a noose. It's a garage door pull, you know. And I don't know if it is a garage door pull or it's not a garage door pull. I don't think it is. It looks like a noose to me.
The fact that no other garage door pull looks like that in 1,600 garages.
But I've heard other people say that there were garage door pulls that look like that. It doesn't make sense to me. Again, I'm with you. I agree. But with whichever one, someone can come up with the individual reason why that event was a coincidence or that event isn't really what you think it is. Right. And what happens is we get into this war of the minutia. Well, is Teddy Roosevelt's statue racist or is it representative of its time? You know, and rather than looking at what is some really, really deep stuff that goes from the very beginning of a life of an African-American living in this country. Like for instance, I just saw there's a study where there's a school system in which African-American students are almost 3 times more likely to be suspended than other students. Right. What do you think causes that?
Right. It's that feeling that, oh, I already in my head think they're prone to acting up. They're prone to being rebellious. They're prone to getting into trouble, to purposely pushing the boundaries, blah, blah, blah. Whereas sometimes it feels like the teachers, when they look at a white child, they go, oh, he's just acting out. And they feel more of a connection with that child because they grew up possibly white or a white kind of existence. And so they connect to that in that level and can understand that better than if they spent time in the African-American community and grew up with African-Americans. There's a different point of view, a different perspective. That's what I think.
I think that's a really good answer. But I'll tell you something interesting. I've asked that same question several times, and it seems to operate a little bit as a litmus test to people's worldview, because there will be some people who say, well, it's obviously bad parenting, or it's obviously the way they were trained, or laziness, or things like that. And there are other people who say, well, clearly those are racist schools. And one reveals one worldview and one reveals another. Rarely do people ask any follow-up questions. What school?
Yeah.
Where is this? Is this a school in South Central, or is this Beverly Hills High? Is this the Ivy League with lots of affirmative action students? Right. The answer, by the way, is this is preschools.
Wow.
In the Midwest. And so, and what I think is important in thinking about that is that, do we therefore draw the conclusion that, oh, obviously preschool teachers are racist? It's, they clearly, the KKK has infiltrated preschool schools and they're trying to kick black kids out of school. Well, that's a ridiculous statement,
Right.
And I think the reality is actually much more disturbing. And it points to this, what I think is really the definition of systemic racism, which is that there's some studies where they've actually put cameras in these schools and to watch how this process is happening. And of course, we're talking about like 2.5-year-olds to 5-year-olds. Yeah. These kids do all sorts of stuff. They pull in hair and pour in the paint out, and they're squirming around in circle time. And the teachers of these schools have to constantly redirect the students. And they have a full range of things that they can do to redirect. They can do very positive things and very gentle things, or very stern things and punitive things. And what these studies that brought these cameras in showed is that just by a little bit, they did the punitive things earlier with African-American students than with the white kids. Now, are these teachers aware that they did this? Probably not. And so it might be that it was, and the thing too is we accelerate in terms of discipline. So if a student does it once, you do it in a very positive way. Oh, Jimmy, you're not supposed to do this, blah, blah, blah. Right. And you might give them a reward for positive behavior. So positive reinforcement. And then if Jimmy continues to repeat the same behavior, then the choices will become more punitive. But how quickly do they become more punitive? And with the African-American students, it took 3 times before it became more punitive. And with the white kids, it took 5 times. Does the teacher aware of this? No, they're not. But what lesson is that teaching that little 3-year-old black kid? Yeah. What are they learning from this? Maybe they're learning that they're not worth as much as that white kid over there. Or maybe they're learning that the world isn't fair. And I know this from having a kid, kids care a lot about justice. They don't quite understand it, but they know when they're being treated unfairly. And so maybe that kid gets angry, and maybe that kid acts out, and maybe that further gets them accelerated to the point where we get this statistic of almost 3 times as many kids getting suspended, African-American kids, as the other students. And then apply that across the world. Bank loans, school admissions, job applications,
and you prison sentences,
prison sentences, and of course the police. And you will see these exact same statistics mirrored over and over again. And so this is why I say it's not just going, that person's a racist, although certainly there are racists in the world. It's the system that is racist. And the thing too, and this is the last thing I'll say, and I know I've gone a long rant here.
No, it's good. It's good. I like it.
But the thing too is that these experiences are cumulative. So if you're 5% less likely to get the job, or you're going to get paid 10% less, or you get into the slightly less school, or your school doesn't have the same resources as the other school, or you get hassled by the cops, or you get, where one person might get a warning from the police, another person goes to jail. All those experiences build up over time until we get what we see today. And this is the thing. And this is why I say, again, it's the system that we have to look at. And we're part of it. And this is why, too, I have my biases. You have biases. Everybody walking around has biases. And those biases are affected by what we see on television, by the news, by the way things are framed, by the way our political leaders talk about things. And those are things that we all have to look at with ourselves.
Yeah. I agree. That's fantastic, man. I mean, not a long rant at all. It's a very actually educated, a very interesting and intelligent rant that gives us a lot of information to explore on our own and put together and kind of make up our own minds about it. So I love that. That's fantastic, man. Let's bring in some other super chats and Streamlabs before we get too bogged down into something. Before we get to Cam Chapman says, "G'day, gents. What's your favorite Cinephiles episode?" Yeah, Steve, do you have a favorite Cinephiles episode of ours? Anything you remember offhand?
There are many I'm very proud of.
Yeah.
There are several that I go, we didn't quite hit it on that one. I think the ones I'm most proud, and there's also, by the way, a very clear, in my mind, evolution of how the show changed over time.
Yeah.
But I think if I'm going to pick any episodes that I think are the best, it's our exploration of Ken Burns' Civil War.
Yeah, dude. I remember you had to talk me into this one because I was like, what? We do movies. How are we breaking down a show that is like 9 or 10 episodes long each? I mean, we take 2 hours for one movie or 3 or 4 hours for a 2-hour movie sometimes. How are we going to do one episode at a time? And the way you constructed it really lent itself to us being able to discuss it and move past certain events in the show that we didn't need to spend too much time on to move to the bigger events that were highlighted, the bigger moments that were highlighted in each of those episodes. And that helped us to speed along through it. And so that may be the one series of episodes we get the most positive reactions to over the years. Honestly, it's incredible to think about. And people love our months as well. The month of Citizen Kane, or more on the month of Orson Welles, rather, month of Akira Kurosawa. We did the month of Hitchcock, right? We did the month of Hitchcock. So we've done a number of those things with our show. We found willing people. Yeah.
And by the way, we know what the next one is.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
It's already been figured out.
It's kind of crazy. We plan it a year ahead of time, Steve, and hope that we land on it correctly.
It's funny. I've seen a couple of things come up in the chat that are someone wrote about Field of Dreams, of course. I just missed one of the ones. I saw one a second ago. Someone said Apocalypse Now. Apocalypse Now is an earlier episode, but that is a key transformative episode of the show.
Yeah.
That is the first one where I realized that we needed to go in order. Because we didn't go in order when we recorded it. We were just talking about what we were talking about. And then when I was editing it, it was a nightmare. And I couldn't, and it was so stressful because we would say a really interesting thing over here about one moment. And then an hour later, we would say another interesting thing about that. I'm like, well, those would be so much better if they're together. And so then it was like just, days and days of me trying to figure out how to make it all work. And that's when I went, we need to do the episode in order. Right.
That was early on. Because we kind of were all over the place, and we didn't kind of restrict ourselves to following an actual. And both of Steve and I, I think as rebellious as I can be sometimes, I know I need to have structure. And Steve was offered structure to the show when he started developing it as a section by section situation. That allowed me to play within the lines. As long as there's lines, I can play within the lines and be fluid within the lines, but I need lines. And we discovered that as we were doing the show. And yeah, Apocalypse, and I think we did a mini kind of commentary for that, didn't we, for Apocalypse?
Just for the opening scene. We did a commentary on the opening scene. Yeah. We've done, I think we did Citizen Kane. Yeah. We did a commentary on Psycho, and we did Yojimbo. Those are the 3 movies we've done full commentaries on. Yeah. People have liked them. I'm sure we'll do more.
Absolutely. Afro Celtuck says the recent Inception episodes were as complex as the film itself. Maybe one of the most difficult films we've ever covered on the show, Steve. Both of us were like, okay, here we go, and just walked into triple dreams to try to figure this film out. And still, we did an addendum to Inception that we put out as a short. Or have we put that one out yet? I don't know if we put that one out.
That is this week. That is coming out tomorrow on Patreon. So on patreon.com/the Cinephiles, we do what we call Cinephile shorts, which are frequently suggestions from our fans and patrons, but also things that come up. I think a few times we did one for Field of Dreams as well, where there was, while I was editing it, and in the week after we recorded it, both of us said, wait, I came up with another idea. And then we said, let's record this. So yes, there were more ideas about Inception, and this will be up tomorrow on patreon.com/the Cinephiles.
I see so many all asking questions in the chat. I really want to focus on Super Chats and Streamlabs. The money you send in, the support you send in to the Outlaw Nation show keeps the lights on in this place, helps me do what I need to do here, cover the costs for doing the Outlaw Nation, all the shows on the Outlaw Nation channel. So we want to answer your questions, but we'd appreciate if you send it in as a Streamlab or Super Chat so I could bring it up and highlight it. And you even send in a little bit of Schmobots. I'll read the question in a robot voice if you want to send a $20 Schmobot in, for God's sakes, here on the Streamlabs. Let me get to the Streamlabs now, Steve. Solskjaer 1999, he said, firstly, thanks for the Cinephiles, gents. It's a goddamn tonic, even before this crazy period. I have so many questions for the both of you. How about, what's your favorite scene ever? Mine's the twist and shout parade in Ferris Bueller celluloid magic. Couldn't agree with you more there, Solskjaer 1999. What do you say, Steve?
I'm so bad at this. I'm so bad at this. This is why I'm not the host of the Top 10 show. But certainly there are scenes that I can mention. I mean, here's what I'll say. I can say, so I said Rocky was the first movie to make me cry. Yes. So Yo, Adrian and Rocky at the end of the movie, I'm weeping. Every time I see it, I'm going to cry. When Harry comes in It's a Wonderful Life and says to my brother George, the richest man in town, I'm going to lose it. I'm out. Yeah. I'm done. Yeah. But then there's also things cinematically where the breakfast scene in Citizen Kane is one of the most remarkable pieces of filmmaking in the history of film. The montage from Up is one of the most powerful pieces of filmmaking. And, we've already talked about the U.S. Indianapolis scene in Jaws, the truck chase in Raiders of the Lost Ark. I guess I can do this. I can come up with great scenes.
I think I agree with just about every one of those scenes. I like the scene where Lawrence goes back into the desert to save the young man when they're heading towards Aqaba, when everyone says he shouldn't do it, and nothing is written until I say it's written, and it's just like, whoa! In this moment of him starting to begin the path towards embracing himself as some kind of white messiah in the desert, you love that scene. I think the Godfather scene at the end where the door closes on Kate.
Amazing.
That is such a powerful moment after he's just lied to her face. To have the door then shut on her face like that is overwhelming. I recently just rewatched Henry V by myself late at night. Lindley had gone to bed early. The Branagh one, Kenneth Branagh one, still one of my damn favorites. And watching him do the St. Crispian's Day speech, it every single time. By the time he gets to the end, when he says, when he gets to that end of whether to be he ne'er so vile, whosoever shall shed his blood with me today, be he ne'er so vile, he shall be my brother. And there's just that connection, and I just like, wow. And the music, Patrick Doyle's music underneath playing, is just so powerful, and it rouses you into action as what it's intended to do. Whereas Olivier's speech in his Henry V is more about nationalistic pride because it's right during World War II. And I recently watched the RSC one that they have on BritBox, which is the 1980 one with people I don't know too well in the film, other than what's his face from Raiders of the Lost Ark. Not Bullock, but the other guy. What's the other guy?
Solo?
No, it's the evil one, the main evil guy. What's his name? I always forget his name.
The major,
the British dude, the British guy who's like could go either way. He could go either way. I forget what his name. Oh,
in Raiders.
Yeah, in Raiders of the Lost Ark. The guy that has the dress. He puts the dress on Marion.
Oh, he's French. Belloc.
Belloc, yeah. Oh, so it is Belloc. Yeah, Belloc is in this version of Henry V as well, but it's completely different. It's different, but there's something about the way Branagh delivers. That's one of my favorite scenes as well. I think when Adrian looks at Rocky and Rocky 2 and says, "I just want you to do one thing for me, win." Yeah, win. Like the second win is the one where I go, just absolutely explode. So yeah, those are great scenes.
I haven't seen Henry V in forever. We actually came pretty close to doing it on the CinePhiles. And John's giving that look, so now I have to go look at our schedule. I've seen it forever. And there's this magical thing about Shakespeare. When you see it done well, the language, it's not that the language disappears. That's the wrong way to say it. But it suddenly becomes there's someone talking. I remember watching Inside the Actors Studio years and years ago, and I think it was Ben Kingsley who was on, and Lipton asked him, well, how do you do Shakespeare? How do you make it? And he said, well, and then he just went into speak the speech I pray you as I pronounced it to you from Hamlet. And he was just talking to you. He was just saying, well, this is how you do it. And it was there was no bridge between I'm talking normal modern English and now I'm talking Shakespeare, and every word made perfect sense.
Yep. The highfalutin John Gielgud style of Shakespeare was good for that time because that was what the Brits wanted to put out. But around the late 80s, early 90s, well, I guess the late 80s with Branagh's Henry V, but you saw that there was a way to do Shakespeare because it wasn't made for the highfalutin upper class. It was made for the people down below, the groundlings. It was made for the groundlings, the people in the lower classes. It was about blood and guts and broken wire and barbed wire, broken glass in your gut. It was about that. It's about the universality of human emotion, whether you're high up here as status or low as status. And it's about the body humor rather, and all of that is involved in Shakespeare. When I studied there in London, Selena Cadell, who was a big RSC person, she taught us that. She said, all you Americans, you think John Gielgud is Shakespeare. It's not. Shakespeare's in your gut. It's in your blood. It's down here. And once you understand what you're actually saying with the text, that's how you can convey it in a really honest way. And so that kind of opened my mind to so many different interpretations. Yeah.
Here's where I'll disagree with you just slightly. Okay. Is that I would say it's not that it's made for the groundlings versus made for the elite. It's that it's made for all of them.
Fair.
It's that
absolutely fair.
Is that and you think about, and I'm going to make the Shakespeare Pixar comparison, which is that one of the great things Pixar does is they don't make movies for kids.
Yes, true.
They make movies for all of us. They make movies that kids will love, but they also, because I've seen a lot of kids movies, and a lot of them are ones that they're made for my kid and not for me. Yeah. And I will watch them because that's what dads do, but they're not. So what Shakespeare does that's so brilliant is there's the body humor and there's the action and there's the revenge and there's the gut, but there is really deep ideas and really complicated thoughts. And the deadly theater is when someone comes in and goes, this is intellectual, but it's also would be deadly if you ignored all those things that are intellectual. It's all there.
Yeah. Don't disagree with you, man. I want to add one more thing to the scene. Ask some of our favorite scenes from Sochar. Sometimes it doesn't have to be a grandiose scene. Sometimes it's one moment, and that's in Good Will Hunting when Matt Damon goes, "I got a number. How you like them apples?" That scene,
great,
is fantastic.
Great,
right?
By the way, that's another movie that
we haven't touched. Good, we haven't
done it yet. No.
Goodwill. We got to have Josh Muna. I'm just putting it out there. Productions donated here, said, can't wait to travel again so I could sneak into the Outlaw movie watching crew of 70 people. I have been trapped with two others as well, Steve. They beg for food and can't make up their mind of what they want. And one is a B word, but I love both of my dogs. Oh, there you go.
I was going to say, I literally had this argument with my son today. I'm hungry. What do you want to eat? I don't know. It's just like,
those are the worst. In Europe, because you go through that yourself sometimes. I'm hungry, but I don't know what for.
Listen, look at me. That's not one of my problems.
Like, come on. Joseph _ Current _ 1998 says, hey, John and Steve, I am a huge fan of the Cinephiles. I recommend it to all my friends who are interested in movies. Question for you guys. What is the greatest year in film history? Also, Steve, what was your favorite movie of last year? Oh, good question.
First of all, last year was really good. Last year was an excellent year. I think it's really because I think you can't beat 1917 for the sheer spectacle and cinematic power of it. Parasite is unbelievably good. That movie's so good. And I love Jojo Rabbit. You know, I just think that's such a brave and, you know, it is the funniest, most heartfelt film about not Hitler Youth I've ever seen.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
It's really good. Obviously 1939 is a great year for film. That's Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. That's Gone with the Wind, which is not one of my favorites. That's Wizard of Oz. There's a bunch of others that year. I think, what's the year that Schindler's List comes out? That's 93, 92. It's something like that.
Right, yeah.
Because that's Schindler's and Jurassic Park and The Piano, and there's a whole bunch of movies that year. Okay. I think The Fugitive.
Right.
Yeah, it's 93.
Throw some ones out there. 94 is one here with The Mask, Dumb and Dumber, Ace Ventura. By the way, all three of those came out in 1994. That's insane. Insane. Jim Carrey, 3 of your comedies in 1 year explode the box office. Speed is that year. The Crow, True Lies, Leon, The Lion King. Ed Wood is that year. Natural Born Killers. Clerks, Forrest Gump, Shawshank Redemption, Quiz Show, 4 Weddings and a Funeral. Pulp Fiction, of course, comes out that year as well. 1999 is interesting. You have The Matrix.
That's a great year, yeah.
Story 2, Tarzan, The Iron Giant, Office Space, Election, Galaxy Quest, Being John Malkovich, The Blair Witch Project, Sixth Sense, Fight Club, American Beauty, Boys Don't Cry, Talented Mr. Ripley, Three Kings, Magnolia, Insider, Eyes Wide Shut, and The Phantom Menace, which you can take a lead if you want. 2007. Listen to 2007. Zodiac, No Country for Old Men, There Will Be Blood, The Bourne Ultimatum, Gone Baby Gone, The Assassination of the Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, Hot Fuzz, Transformers, hello, Ratatouille, Juno, Superbad, Atonement, Michael Clayton, Into the Wild, and Eastern Promises were that year. Oh, interesting stuff, man. I got to go with 1999, I think, in my opinion.
I think 99 because there's so much groundbreaking stuff. Because Matrix, Fight Club, I think you said Magnolia, Being John Malkovich, those are all completely unique and completely groundbreaking films.
I agree. Michael Nip donated. Oh, thank you, Michael. Very kind donation. He said, Outlaw Nation is one of my favorite shows you do, John, and Steve has been a great guest. I agree. What is one underrated movie that you both would say is a must watch? Please, no robot voice. LOL. Okay, Mike. Tell me, Steve, do you have an underrated movie that is a must watch for you?
So there's one I've talked about. It's come up on the Cinephiles a lot. I think you haven't seen it, and that's 7 Days in May, the John Frankenheimer film, which I like a lot. That's a potential coup in the United States, and it's written by Rod Serling and stars Burt Lancaster and Kirk Douglas. Ava Gardner is in it. It's a really, really good movie. I'm trying to think of other ones.
Okay. I have to look. I think Matawan right here, this Criterion. Matawan is an incredible film. If you haven't seen Matawan from the 80s, it is phenomenal. Chris Cooper, James Earl Jones, Mary McDonnell, all in this film from John Sayles. It just came out of Criterion Collection. It's fantastic.
Oh, cool.
I don't think anyone talks about it. So I would put that in the list. 13 Assassins. No one talks about 13.
That's a really cool movie. I mean, it's like as we go into genres, it's like I think the first 2 Yip Man movies are really good kung fu movies. I'm a huge Jackie Chan fan, and Drunken Master 2 is an unbelievable martial arts movie. Yeah. I think I'm trying to think of things like, but it's not underrated. Is like Moon is a great film that maybe not that many people have seen.
I put Syriana in there, even though people now don't talk about Syriana at all. Syriana is goddamn fantastic, and nobody talks about it. George Clooney's incredible in that film, and now it's just kind of lost to the ages. People talk about everything else but Syriana when it comes to these kind of like political thrillers, and that one is so well done. If you're a political nut like Steve and I are, it's like it so speaks your language. That's one I would throw in there as well.
What I would say too is, and this is just maybe kind of how I learned to be a cinephile, is that what's really interesting to do is take an old director that you love and watch the movies that you haven't seen. Because here's how it really started for me is I got a TiVo right after I got out of film school. So it's 2000 or 2001. And I dust off that. Yeah. And I found out that you could search for a director and just make a wish list so that anytime a particular director showed up. And so I put in John Huston and King Vidor and Fritz Lang and, Billy Wilder and William Wyler and all these directors. And so what happened is all these movies came up that I had never heard of. And some of them were amazing. Like there's a movie, I think it's King Vidor called Your Daily Bread. Or Our Daily Bread, and it's all about the Depression, and it's about like people bonding together to help support each other, and it's a really good movie. And I never would have seen it. I'd never heard of it. There's things like I think John Huston is probably the most modern director. He's like a director of the 70s, working in the 50s and 40s, 50s, and 60s. And so movies of his like Night of the Iguana, are just really interesting, powerful movies that and so that's why. Go watch all of the Billy Wilder films. Go watch all that. You will find gems that are really interesting. And like you'll see things, and maybe this is just because this is how I think as a cinephile, is you'll see things where you go, oh, that's where that comes from. Oh, that's where this person was doing that thing in 1938.
Yeah, that's a great point. And John Huston is a director that doesn't get mentioned in the same breath with some of the greats like John Ford and Howard Hawks and all these great Billy Wilder, but they don't mention John Huston in the same breath. You look at his resume, interesting resume of films, and some great classics are on that list.
And we have never done a John Huston film on the Cinefiles.
We have done Treasure of the Sierra Madre. We did Chinatown. John Huston's in it.
He's in it. Yeah. No, I love Treasure of the Sierra Madre. I would love to do it.
One to do as well. Let's see a couple of these here. Chris Nolan. Oh, one more. Let me before I jump into this. One other underrated one I thought about that Steve and I both know, and we've been talking about doing it on the Cinephiles. A Face in the Crowd. Nobody talks about that Elia Kazan film, and it is a politically brilliant film about a hayseed that Andy Griffith plays, who finds his way in a deceptive manner to be into almost achieving one of the highest political offices in the land by being the aw shucks guy. But behind the scenes, he knows he's putting on an act. It's such a brilliant breakdown and commentary on the lies politicians will tell you, the aw shucks, the ho-hum stuff that they do when they desperately want power, and what happens when that veneer is finally cracked, how desperate they become for that power when they get close to it. So if you haven't seen it's Andy Griffith's. It ain't Andy Griffith like from the Andy Griffith Show. This is Andy Griffith on a whole other dark level with a great job by Patricia Neal as well. Incredible film.
So I haven't seen it since the current administration has been in the White House, and it just came out on Criterion, and I just got it. So I'm thinking that is something we might do in the next few months. So I will crack it open, but I'm really scared of it. Just for that reason. Like I read recently Sinclair Lewis's "It Can't Happen Here," which is essentially about a demagogue strongman taking over the United States, and it is a disturbing book, because it is about it can't happen here.
Well, it casually can. That's what someone said. It's been going around on social media. You can no longer use the term "I'd avoid that like the plague," because apparently we don't avoid things like a plague because we don't avoid a plague. So don't wear masks and all that kind of stuff. All right, Chris, this is from Paul. He said, Chris Nolan not liking chairs on set. Thoughts? Did you hear about this, Steve?
I did. It's surprising that I actually did see this thing.
Always up to date stuff.
Let me say two things about it. The first thing I'll say is when I was in film school, One of my teachers said, you know, the director, they've got that chair that folds up and it says director on it. He said, good directors never sit in it. And I totally agree with that. I don't think a director should be sitting down. I mean, it's not that I don't think a director should be sitting down. I think that a director who's doing their job rarely can sit down, because you're constantly working with the actors, the cinematographers, talking to the AD, talking to the line producer, coordinating things with, you know, the art dogs, with the costumers, with makeup. You know, you're just constantly going. So in that sense, I sort of agree with it. In another sense, he is an asshole
for saying that. If that's true, if Anne Hathaway said,
I mean, you know, if you're a person who's lugging heavy shit all day, and there are a lot of guys on the crew who are doing that, and the director is not, and the director is not giving them a comfy place to sit down, then that's fucked up.
I'm slowly starting to lose this appreciation or love of Christopher Nolan as I see him trying to push Tenet out at a time when people are dying from this coronavirus disease, him trying to put that out in the theaters, trying to only jumping every couple of weeks. And by the way, the studio would not do that if Nolan didn't 100% approve, because they worship at the altar of Nolan right now. Warner Brothers does. So him trying to push this movie out there for his own glory or his own, gratification, I think is a dangerous thing. You should just say, let's just push it to next year. People are dying from this thing. Things are spiking up. Why are we incrementally pushing it only every extra 2 weeks? What is this ego that needs to have this film come out first before any other film is a studio film? I just find it to be troubling, in my opinion. And and as I read this, I also wonder if there's some behind the scenes stuff that we don't know about that other people have had issues with Christopher Nolan. I don't know. I mean, Bale doesn't. Bale has said he'll only come back and do Batman if Nolan directs it again. So I don't know.
So first of all, we have very thin evidence on this chair thing. We don't, I don't really know a lot about what that, because by the way, this is something the director said to Anne Hathaway, right?
Right.
Directors say things to actors that are not necessarily true.
That's a fair point.
Because the job of the director is not to be honest necessarily. I'm not recommending the directors should be liars, but the job of the director with the actor is to get them to give the performance that they want. And so sometimes you might say a thing that isn't exactly the whole truth to get what you want from that actor. I don't know about the chair thing. I will say two things about the Tenet thing. The first is, anyone who says that we should just not open up the economy and that's everyone should just accept it, that's crazy. Like there are huge consequences to opening the economy completely, and there are huge consequences to not opening it at all. There are literal lives at stake. It's very complicated. We have an economy that, there are people who, there are longer breadlines now than have been at any time since the Great Depression. There's a tremendous problem with unemployment. Obviously, all these things I don't have to tell you. And so, and there's a desire to want to get your movie out. And so we have movie theaters going bankrupt. We have studios that are in trouble. We have films that are in debt. And so I do understand that. That being said, success is incredibly isolating. And the more successful you become, particularly as someone like a powerful director, the more you only hear people that are telling you you're awesome. And I think that is incredibly corrupting and incredibly dangerous. And for some reason, I put Christopher Nolan and Tarantino in together in my head in a way, because they're both geniuses. They both do incredibly brilliant things. They have tremendous filmmaking craftsmanship, and they both seem to have these really big egos, and that's where I kind of go, there are people like Ron Howard or people like the great Carl Reiner, who we just lost, who are like the really nice directors who want to get along. Yeah.
It's directed films.
Yeah. Or Rob Reiner, or, there's a whole bunch of them. And then there are these other people who are these tyrants, Kubrick and Kurosawa and those people. Yeah. And those people might make great films, but they also hurt a lot of people along the way. And I don't know that Nolan's one of them, by the way, but it could be.
Never know. Let's hit some more of these things. And I want to come back to the Carl Reiner thing in our second hour here, Steve. We've got Haskell 420. He chimed in with a favorite scene from Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. My friends, you bow to no one. Tears for Haskell. I respect that.
100%. Me too. I'm crying too. Totally.
I go, okay, when's the next one? All right. Anthony Gonzalez Says, I'm a longtime patron, but you guys never got to a film of mine. Guess my picks weren't all that good. So let me ask, would you do Born Identity? Well, Anthony, are you at the tier where you can submit for us to do a film of yours? I'd have a hard time believing we've covered so many films, and we try to get.
No, Anthony's right. So I don't remember what tier he's on, but and this is why maybe we should just announce it right now, is that it literally in the next couple of days, we are restructuring all our tiers, because the reality is that let's say we do 50 episodes a year, of which a good percentage of them are doubles. So two-parters. And we did not estimate, we underestimated how long it would take us to get through all these picks. And so we can't do it at the way that we said that we could. So Anthony, thank you so much for your support.
Yes.
It's not that was not our intention, but there are ways that this show has happened, and we've learned about it since we've had Patreon, and we got to change the structure of it. And what we're going to do, we think, is give you way more value for your money, but getting actual picks on the show is going to get a little bit tougher. Right. So thank you for your support, and I like Born Identity. I think it's really good.
I think you can grandfather Anthony in and maybe make him one of the first people we kind of do a film for in the next couple of months. So I'm cool with that idea, and Born Identity is great. I love that film. So
I like it. Yeah.
Thank you, Anthony. I appreciate it, man. Good to see you in here. Thank you for watching. Thanks to all of you who are watching. We've got almost 100 of you all watching us live. Please hit that like button as well. Move that mouse over there. Hit that thumbs up button. Give us some love. The more likes you put here, the higher we move up in the algorithm of YouTube to get noticed, this show and this channel. And if you're watching us now after we've already done it live, please leave a comment. As many comments as you can leave below and as many likes you can leave below, once again, elevates the show in the algorithm of YouTube and the Outlaw Nation channel. So anything you can, even if you can't donate, you can't do Streamlabs or Super Chats, or you can't, be a part of the Patreon, leaving a comment, leaving a like, that's a great thing for us as well. Let me move on to another Super Chat that came, Streamlab that came through. This is a big one. Thank you so much, Wayne Edwards. You're incredibly kind with your support here. Hello, Stephen John. I have been a Cinephiles fan since the beginning, and I am a studio executive level Patreon. Well, thank you very much, Wayne. Hearing you both discuss film and the level of expertise Steve puts into every episode makes it worth every penny. Excellent work, guys. Oh, thank you, Wayne.
Thanks so much, Wayne.
Don't you think studio executive level Patreon? Are we going to talk about the tiers here, or are we going to wait till we do the announcement later?
I don't know.
All right, I'm happy to announce if you want it. So
we could do it now. I don't have them in front of me at the moment, but I can probably find them.
We'll figure that out. Vincent Zawada asking us here in the chat, in the super chat, do we love Downfall? That Bruno Gans film about Hitler, Hitler's last few days with I can't remember her name, but she was in Control, that Joy Division biopic. But yeah, have you seen Downfall, Steve? Do you like Downfall?
Never seen it.
What? Really?
Yeah. Yep.
That could be one we could do on the Cinephile.
I mean, we've talked about this lots of times. We all have gaps. Yeah. That is one I've never seen.
I just saw Highlander for the first time thanks to the Cinephiles. Not to give anything away, I had never seen it before, so it's an interesting discussion to say the least. All right, Soulstar 1999 wants to know what are your favorite living/deceased directors?
Are my favorite living/deceased? They have to be. They had to be both living and deceased. That seems hard.
2020, I think anything's possible.
I think the answer is going to surprise nobody. I mean, my favorite directors are the great directors: Orson Welles, Hitchcock, Billy Wilder, Stanley Kubrick, Steven Spielberg, Akira Kurosawa. These are the guys. Francis Ford Coppola, Martin Scorsese. I mean, like, they're odd ones, which is like, I think Rob Reiner's first run of like 7 films is one of the great runs in history. And he's a guy that gets overlooked because Spinal Tap, Sure Thing. What's the kid one? Stand By Me. Then Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, Misery, A Few Good Men, and The American President. That is a run of great films. He's rarely ranked as one of our great filmmakers, but that is a run of great films.
Yeah, because the latter half of his career is full of some clunkers, and that affects the overall thing. That's sometimes that can happen with her. I agree with it. Just about every director he named. I think Mike Nichols is another good one we can throw in there.
Great,
right? Charlie Chaplin, I think you can throw in there as well as an incredible director. And I hate to say this, Polanski's a fan. I just watched Rosemary's Baby for the first time last week. Holds up like a mother. I couldn't believe it.
That's a great movie. This is the thing, and maybe we need to clue in everyone to this. Being a good person and being a great artist, they do not necessarily coincide. Sometimes they do, but Woody Allen is a person who's made some of my favorite films, and he is another problematic person.
Yeah, true, very true.
But it doesn't change how I feel about his films.
Yeah, agreed. All right, let's bring in someone live. Andrew G, you've been waiting to come on. Are you good to go? You want to give me a thumbs up? Are you good? All right. This guy's a big fan of ours. He's a big fan of CineFiles, so I'm going to go into the bigger box here like this and bring him in. Andrew G, what's going on, man?
Yo, what's up, Rocha?
You letting someone in? Be careful, man.
No, I was shutting the balcony door.
Okay. Well, Andrew G, this is Steve Morris. Say hi, man.
Hey, Steve. How's it going, man?
Good, Andrew. Nice to see your face. How you doing?
Not too bad. I'm a big fan of CineFiles, as John knows. I love listening to you guys. My favorite episode might be that Seven Samurai, which got me to watch it, and now I can't stop watching it.
What else? What can you say about Seven Samurai? It is one of the most remarkable films of all time, period.
Yeah, I love it. My question for you, I'm an animator in Ottawa, and I asked this to the Geek Buddies and John maybe a week ago. I know you guys did a couple animated movies on CineFiles, like Akira and Incredibles, I think, right?
Yeah, yes. I feel like we did one more. Beauty and the Beast we did too.
Oh, okay. My question to you would be, what's your favorite animated movie and why, briefly? I'm not sure I've ever heard you say. And also, another fun question for you guys, because I just finished watching it for the millionth time of my life tonight. What do you guys think of Batman Returns?
I know how John thinks, because you were just talking about it. Was it on Geek Buddies that you were just talking about it?
Oh, yeah. Batman Returns is better than Batman, in my opinion, overall as a film. 1989's, and by the way, I just rewatched 1989's Batman maybe 2 nights ago on HBO Max. Every scene with the Joker is great. Every scene with Batman and the Joker is great. Everything with Robert Wuhl is terrible. Everything with Kim Basinger, through no fault of her own, is terrible, because they undercut her like crazy in that movie. And Steve and I battled over Marion Ravenwood in Raiders of the Lost Ark, so we might battle over this as well when we do 1989's Batman. If we ever do 1989's Batman.
No, we wouldn't battle over that one.
Yeah, because she's initially presented as this this photographer that's been to and witnessed some of the most incredible horrors of war, but yet she's screaming through the rest of the movie as a damsel in distress, and it's so frustrating to watch. In Batman Returns, no such thing exists other than the Christy Swanson character. What she does really well, Michelle Pfeiffer, she just takes over that movie in such a powerful way. And the Penguin, as much as you may like or dislike Danny DeVito, I like what he does with his characterization, and Walken fits, even with the weird stuff he's doing. As Max Schreck, Walkman totally fits in that movie. So that's I love that movie. What was your first question? Oh, animated
film. Just on Batman, I tend to pretty much agree with John. I haven't seen him in a long time. I was so excited when '89 Batman came out. I mean, I remember the trailer. I was working at a comic book store at the time, because I was in the middle of college, and so it was a big deal. And I remember there are things about it design-wise where you're like, and Nicholson, I think Keaton's a great Batman, or particularly a great Bruce Wayne, that I went, stuff is great, but then there's a whole bunch of stuff in there that's not great. I think I agree with you that I like Return better, but not maybe as much as you. I didn't like the Penguin, but obviously the Catwoman stuff is fantastic. Favorite animated film, I will first say a very similar thing that I said about Rob Reiner, which is the first, 12, 14 Pixar movies are all good. I like every one of them and love most of them. I don't think there is no emotional experience I've had more than Up, but that's for personal reasons. I don't think it's the best one. Toy Story 3 is an incredible film. I have a real love for Aladdin. Aladdin just makes me happy. Yeah, those are probably the top ones. But Finding Nemo is great, and there's so many of them that are great. I love Ratatouille. There are a lot of them that are fantastic.
Big Hero 6 is
it's really good.
That's one of, for me, honestly, dude, that's one that has climbed up over the years since I watched that movie. And also falls into the underrated movie category. Hardly anyone talks about how good Big Hero 6 is. And by the way, there was only 3 Disney animated films, not Pixar. Disney animated films have been nominated for Best Animated Feature, and Big Hero 6 was one of them. I mean, that won, and Big Hero 6 is one of them, and yet nobody talks about it. And so to me, it's a frustrating situation because I think that film is absolutely magical and really powerful and emotional and heartbreaking. It's as damaging to your emotions as any Pixar movie. When you see his brother in that video after what's happened to his brother, you're just like, oh my God. Pixar, man, Finding Nemo is like my number one animated film. I can watch that film on a loop 24 hours a day. 24 hours a day.
I watched it recently. It's so well made. Another one you mentioned earlier, by the way, Iron Giant. That's a fantastic film.
Yeah. What about you, man? What's your favorite animated film?
I think I said it was. I don't know if it's actually my favorite, but I just wanted to plug it last week. Was Rock and Rule.
Oh, right, the 80s one.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, that's a film or a series?
It's a film. It's an animated film. I think it was made in Toronto. One of my old bosses actually worked on it, which surprised me. But
okay,
yeah, it's very cool. If you like heavy metal, like it's like from the 80s and has a lot of music in it, like heavy metal. Kind of like.
I certainly remember Heavy Metal. That was an important film at a certain time in my life.
Yeah.
What is that? Funny feeling in my pants. Yeah, exactly. What? Go ahead. What?
Yeah, I don't know what like my favorite animated movie is. Like,
can I give you a small piece of advice?
Yeah.
When you ask a question live on YouTube, you must have your own answer. You should have prepared that.
Cool. So I'll leave it at Rock and Rule then, because I do Rock and Rule, and everyone should check out Rock and Roll for sure.
All right. Cool. All right, thanks, Andrew. It's good to see you, man.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming in. You can come in live just like Andrew did. Let me bring in Wiley Todd. He'll explain. And he probably has a question for you, Steve. So let's bring in Wiley now. Wiley, will you tell the people at home how they can come in live and ask questions of Steve and I as we head into the second half of this hour?
Yes, it's pretty simple, guys. What will happen is there'll be a StreamYards link in chat posted by me, Wiley Todd, in chat. All you have to do is click on it. If you've never been on the website, it's going to ask you things to allow your camera and microphone. It doesn't matter if you have one of these. You can do it on your phone. It all works the same. And then if you have any questions on getting on into there, just message me in chat at Wiley Todd. I'll help you guide it through. Come ask a question. It's fun, very enjoyable. That's how you get it.
Wiley puts that up. I'll bring it up for people to type in that address if they want to come in live here on StreamYard and ask us a question. Wiley, what's your question for Steve? You got one? You were saying you got one off camera. What you got?
Yes. So first of all, I have to thank you guys. I haven't told you this, Rocha, but just of yesterday, I've been officially enrolled into a film school, and I am officially in now, and that I would not have been there if it wasn't for you guys. Because when you're watching movies, you kind of get down because you watch so many. You guys have kept my motivation up to a 100 at all times, so I have to thank you that for 1,000 times %.
Congratulations, Wiley. What school are you going to?
Well, I'm Oklahoma, where I'm going to. They have this community college that has this very, very cool like film school that Francis Ford Coppola started. It's the best one in Oklahoma, so I'm going to that. Plus, the new production company here in Oklahoma, they're having an academy too. I got accepted to that, so I'm doing both at the same time. So I'm very excited to start my journey. I literally have to thank you guys. But my question is, so recently because after every movie I do, Steve, I told Rocha this already, that I listen to your podcast. I have listened to every episode at least 5 times. So wow. I do these deep dives, like you were just saying, going through director's filmography. I do that constantly now. And through commentaries, I never watched a commentary until you started saying you do them. Rocha told me that you watched them, so I started that. I thank you for that as well. But anyways, my question. So my current deep dive I'm doing right now is John Hughes. I've seen most of every single one of his movies, but there's a couple I haven't seen. So my 2 questions one is, what is your guys' like most underlooked John Hughes movie? Because, of course, there's the staples, Breakfast Club, Home Alone, all those. But what is like the underlooked ones, do you think? And my question to you is, every director has this thing they really like nail down. And there's one I thought of John Hughes is that his perspective is reflection. Every single one of his movies has that underlying theme of reflection. What do you think John Hughes, as a director or writer, does very well in his movies?
I think the thing he does best is compassion. I think, I mean, he's obviously a very funny writer. He knows how to create a funny situation. But I think the thing, you know, there's the line in Breakfast Club where Ali Sheedy says, it's inevitable. When you grow old, your heart dies. And John Hughes's heart didn't die, because only someone who could remember the feeling of what it was like to be a kid in high school could write the films that he wrote. That's, I think, the key. And even if you look at a movie like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles that we did on the show, there's so much compassion for these people that are pretty darn obnoxious and unlikable. And yet he loves them, and that love comes through in the films. And I think if it didn't have that, if it just had his great comic sensibility, which is really good, we wouldn't be talking about them today. As far as, I don't really have an underrated one. I mean, like, the least popular one that I watched a lot is, I guess, Weird Science, which is kind of dated and maybe problematic today. I don't know. I haven't watched it in a while, but I really liked it. But, you know, the ones that I adore are the big ones: Breakfast Club, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Those are the, you know, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. That's it. So,
yeah, I think I echo Steve's feelings about it to a degree, but also I think the number one thing for me when I watch his movies is he loves his characters. He loves the characters he puts in his movies, and that makes you love them, because he presents to you, even the villains, he presents a well-rounded approach to every character in his films, and wants you to see where you side. Even Ed, right? Look, Jeffrey Jones is problematic outside of Ferris Bueller's Day Off, of course, but in the movie,
oh, he's so good.
Ed is great, but Ed is a good, like, when you get older, that's the funny thing about John Hughes movies. You start out when you're young and you're relating to the kids, but as you get older, you find yourself connecting with the older adults more, because you're like, yeah, these kids should not be taken off school to be running around Chicago, taking the dude's car. Like, if you took, I'd have your ass if you took my car, for God's sakes. I don't care how I treat my son, I'd have your ass. But like those little things, but those are moments of rebellion that you remember. So even when you're siding with the adults as you get older, you can still remember what it's like to be that kid and be rebellious and taking chances and pushing your boundaries and seeing what you can get away with. And that's what I love about John Hughes. And then when he does his adult fare, like you see in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, or a couple other films, even Dutch, he's got an affection for his characters that helps you fall in love with them and the journey they're going on. And that means a lot when you're watching a movie from him. So overall, that's the thing. And that conveys who he was as a person, I imagine, because the director's movies are very much who the hell they are as a human being, which is why I love the Kurosawa films the way I do, why I love the Orson Welles films the way I do, you know, even the later ones, which are difficult to access, but that's Welles at the time, a lot of smoke and mirrors, difficult to access the real humanity of him. You had to work hard to get there, and even then you might not get there. But with Hughes, it was all there on the table for you to enjoy, and it isn't an easy teenager film or I hate when they put them in coming of age films. Those films deserve a better category than coming of age films, because so much more is happening. And it's almost like Pixar, what Steve said about Pixar. He didn't make movies for kids or teenagers.
Exactly.
He made movies for everybody, because everybody's been that teenager. And as you get older, everybody's been Ed Rooney or Steve Martin or John Candy, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, or Dutch. You know, everybody's been those characters. And I think he did Curly Sue as well.
Yeah.
Everybody's been those characters. So you can understand them. You can connect to them. And that's important when you're watching his movies.
Hey, Wiley, can I give you my standard piece of film school advice?
That is a dream. Thank you, man. Yes, I'm here listening all ears.
So this is what I always tell my students first semester. The most important thing is that your job is to fuck up.
Okay.
That a lot of people think that, okay, I'm going to make my first film and it's going to be amazing and I'm going to put it on YouTube and it's going to get 20 million hits, or I'm going to send it to Sundance and I'm going to be in Sundance and everything's going to happen. First of all, that's not going to happen. Or at least it's extremely unlikely that it's happened. Maybe you're the guy who makes it happen and that's awesome. But the process of film school is learning from mistakes. And so, and the key place that you learn almost always is in the editing room. So you're going to make your film. You're going to do all sorts of things wrong. And then you're going to get in the editing room and you need to look really clearly at why didn't this work? And maybe it was I wasn't prepared enough. I didn't have a shot list. Or maybe it was because I didn't communicate well enough ahead of time with my actors. Communication is one of the hardest things about filmmaking. Or maybe it was because I didn't get the right shot. I needed a close-up here. I needed an insert here. The camera's in the wrong place. And all of those things, that is what's going to teach you. And take those lessons and apply them to the next film. And then you're going to fuck up in all sorts of other ways. And take those lessons and apply them to the next film. And repeat and repeat and repeat. And I'll tell you something. I still do that with the CineFiles. I still make mistakes. I still rethink things. I still go, how can we do this better? Over and over and over again. That's what you want out of film school.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
There you go.
Seriously.
Don't be a dick director. That's the number one thing. Fuck up all you want. Just don't treat actors like shit, and don't treat your production crew like shit, and don't you ever call an actor a movable prop. If you do, I will find you and break your legs, Wiley. No,
Rocha, you know I'm not that type of person. You know I won't do that.
I've seen you get upset about things. I just want to make sure you don't put that out on. Don't ever put it out on the directors of the production crew because they're working, or the actors rather, because they're working hard to bring your vision to life. And the least you can do is respect that. You'll have moments when you get mad with an actor who gets really self-involved. Just go take a walk and throw something at the wall. Come back and that actor later. But yes, so that's my small piece of advice for you.
Good advice.
Thank you.
All right, Wiley, thanks so much for coming in, and please send that put that link in there, and I'll put it up for people who want to come in live and ask us questions.
We'll do, sir.
Thank you so much, dude. I love what Wiley does for the show. Couldn't do it without him, honestly. He's such a good producer to help me here do the show. Steve, we've got some more Streamlabs that came in. Let me run through them real quick. Raven donated some. He said, "Morning, y'all. Always great to see you two talk shop." Raven is, I think he's in Palau, so it's morning for him there. He says, "My question: which movie, in your opinion, had a great concept and looked good on paper, but ended up not being that good? And is there a movie that didn't look good but ended up being one of the greats?" Damn, that's a tough question, my man.
Yeah, that's really hard. I mean, there's so many. Well, here's one. This is a movie that is terrible that we saw together that I actually had hoped might be good, which was the remake of RoboCop. And the reason is that I think that now is the perfect time to remake RoboCop. There's so many things going on in the world. And I mean, and in fact, right now, even more than it was when it came out, there's so many things going on in the world that you could comment on, because that's what's great about RoboCop is the mix of comedy and violence and satire and commentary on our society. And that movie sucked. It's terrible. One that didn't sound like that good on paper, that is a movie that I really like, which is Once, the musical. It's just like, okay, it's a street musician who meets this person and they do some stuff together. It's very thin and it's great. Love that movie.
I'll tell you two films that recently that the concept, I was like, nah, I don't think it's going to be good. And I walked in there and really enjoyed it. And one is a remake, Aladdin. I totally expected that to be absolutely terrible. And I thoroughly loved it. I found myself begrudgingly through the first hour going, God, I'm really enjoying this. I shouldn't be enjoying this, right? I should be hating this. And then the second hour is like, this is fantastic. I'm just loving all the characters, loving the approach, loving the way they did it, and enjoyed Will Smith. I mean, that's a tough thing to follow. Robin Williams in such an iconic role, and Will really made it his own for that movie.
He didn't follow him. That's the key.
Right. Yeah. He did his own thing. And the other one is Yesterday, which I have become such a massive fan of.
Still haven't seen it.
Oh my God! I'll let you borrow my copy. I watched the trailer and I was like, I don't know if this guy can really sing. It doesn't seem that interesting. This seems like a throwaway romantic comedy. And then I went and saw it, and I just fell in love with it. And I was very fortunate to be able to interview the lead, Himish Patel, on an early episode of the Deep Cut over there when I was at Collider. And it was a joy. It was a joy to champion this movie. And they were so kind to send me a record player with the Yesterday logo on it. They sent me the soundtrack for free. I just was such a fan of this movie. And it was so needed for me, Steve, like something really happy and fun to deal with the Beatles, because Across the Universe is very divisive. This one I thought was a really sweet approach to it. A film I thought that was going to be kick-ass, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And it was an utter disappointment, just an utter disappointment wasting Sean Connery, wasting all those great actors in that movie, and just falling apart in my head. And I think, people might get mad at me for this, and I'm okay with taking the heat. I would say Phantom Menace. I couldn't have been more excited for Phantom Menace. And I remember walking out of that theater going, what the fuck did I just watch? And the Jar Jar Binks thing bothered me from the beginning. Listen, when you're already in your mind, when you've dealt with racism in your life through your parents or yourself, and you watch something like Phantom Menace, it doesn't take you 10 years to be like, oh yeah, that seems like a racist character or two. Like immediately, Watto, Jar Jar, it just, and this is nothing against Ahmed Best, who voiced it, who of course had his own struggles afterwards, because people stupidly blamed him for that. It's the feeling of like, is George Lucas a fucking racist? Like in your head, you're like, what? And so you had to kind of come to terms with that. And I remember being utterly disappointed by that situation. And I think the new version of Star Wars, because also it's an all-white story for 6 movies, basically. You have you have Lando on the side, you have Jimmy Smits on the side, but it's an all-white essential story. But the new trilogy has been nice to be a little bit more diverse. Latino, black, white, woman, man, it's all mixed in, and I like that. So whether you like the movies or not is a whole nother ballgame. But for me, Phantom Menace really disappointed the shit out of me. So
I was unexpectedly high when I first saw Phantom Menace because someone had given us some brownies who didn't know how to make them, and they were much, much stronger than I was prepared for. So I liked it when I first saw it, and it was only on when I saw it again that I was like, "Oh, this movie's terrible." Here's another one that was, and of course I knew this was going to be terrible, but I've read Stephen King's Dark Tower books over and over and over again, and that movie is terrible on such a high level. Like you have to work hard to be that bad. And what's so awful about it is you have this source material that people love and you just throw it out.
Yeah.
Not just that you compress it, but you just completely ignore it and just take some names of the characters and do something completely different. It is a heinously terrible film.
Yeah. I would throw Bonfire of the Vanities onto that pile as well. What a great book. What a great cast at the time. All of them in their prime. Bruce Willis, Tom Hanks, Melanie Griffith, all in their prime. And that film was an utter garbage fire. Let's see. Joshua Gerard Butler sent us a super chat and said, what do you guys think of the film Cry Freedom? The Biko story with Denzel and Kevin Kline. Thoughts on that one?
I haven't seen it in forever. I saw it when it came out and I liked it and I thought it was good. I have that's it. No deep thoughts.
Yeah, it's a perfectly fine biopic, but I don't think it's one of those. Like, I would watch Power of One over Cry Freedom if we're talking about a South African film. Even Invictus, I'd probably watch over Cry Freedom before, because I think it's a good movie. I just feel like it's a very dated movie when you watch it now, because I tried to watch it again a couple of years ago for the Schmodown, and it just, I couldn't get through it. Let's see. Soshar99 wants to know, what are the chances of a Forrest Gump Cinephiles episode and perhaps a London live appearance? I went to top 10. We have to do we have to have a Cinephiles edition too. Oh, look, I love this idea of Soshar 1999. I don't think we could do the show live because so much editing is involved here. But Steve, what do you think about a live Cinephiles show?
We certainly talked about it. I totally would do it. It would be different. Yes. And we John and I have talked about various formats. Like we could have a panel with some of our favorite guests on stage talking about film. We've talked about, like, do we tell the audience to watch this movie in advance, or do we have a screening of a film and then discuss it? Or we talked about a lot of different ways to do it. What you don't know about the Cinephiles is one of the reasons it's edited is that I spend so much time going, what happens next? Oh, hold on, I lost my place. Okay. There's so much, because trying to keep straight the whole film and have it all, happen in the right ways is hard. And I could not do that live on stage, or I could, but it would not be entertaining. Right. But I'm happy to do a live Cinephiles episode. It would be very fun.
I'm down.
Yeah. What was, when they asked about Forrest Gump?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it in a while. My gut is it's dated, but I mean, I liked it.
Yeah. It's not a bad film for us to revisit. Certainly 1994. I think I watched the last half an hour recently, flipping through channels, and like, this is fine. My girlfriend hates the movie, so we don't watch it in the house. But I mean, I wouldn't mind revisiting it to maybe break it down and analyze it, because there have been a lot of people who've torn that movie apart and what it says about Jenny and her, how it says like it's basically low key saying that if you're a drug, if you're an addict or if you're a junkie or a promiscuous person, that you're going to end up with AIDS and die. And it's like, it's a terrible message to send. But
it's a fundamentally conservative movie. And I don't mean that way in it criticizing conservatism, but more in it is a, believe in your family and your, don't go too wild in any particular direction. Yeah.
If you just play all shucks the whole time, everything's going to work out for you.
Yeah.
That's what it's, when you look at it. So that's fair. We might do it. We still might do it and maybe just approach it that way. Although we don't like to be negative when we look at films, but sometimes we can't stop.
I mean, but we also don't shy away from things that we need to be critical of. Very
true. Much to the chagrin. Look, I took so much shit for the Marion Ravenwood stuff. I will never apologize for it. Joseph _Kern 1998 sent us somebody said, hello again. One of my favorite movies of all time is American Beauty. I know that movie hasn't exactly aged well for many reasons, but would you all ever consider doing it on an episode? I don't know, Steve. I don't know if I ever would. Yeah, right?
I mean, I liked it. I think it's a well-made movie. I think Kevin Spacey gives a great performance. Because here's the other thing about the show is that John and I are going to spend some time invested in a particular world.
Sure.
And I don't know that I really want to. Like another one that's way more disturbing than American Beauty that I think is a genuinely great film is A Clockwork Orange. Does that mean I want to do it on the Cinephiles? I don't know.
If I want to put myself through that, to be honest.
It's a lot to go through. It's a lot. And because I don't want to shy away from things or topics, then we have to talk about rape and violence and just, and that movie makes you feel a lot of things that you don't really want to feel. And we have to talk about, it's really icky, because you find yourself siding with someone and things are funny that are horrible. And like, I just don't know that I want to do it.
That being said, it kind of feels topical still yet again, Steve, this idea of wanting to control the populace to feel a certain way about crime or whatever. Hey, I'm going to sign this executive order. So if you take down a statue, we're going to prosecute you to 10 years in prison, blah, blah, blah. It's my way of keeping my foot, again, basically on your neck. And so it's like that kind of thing. What are we doing with societal control of people and their rebellious natures? I don't know, even though this country was built on a revolution. So,
some things are complicated, and that is a complicated film.
Yep.
I mean, maybe we'll do it. Like I said, I genuinely think it's a great film.
Yep.
It's just hard.
I'll put in maybe 5 more Kubricks before I want to do that one, but we maybe. Red _pill _97 says, what do you think about a Khabib Nurmagomedov MMA biopic? That's do you know who Khabib is, man? Do you know the fighter Khabib?
Nope.
Okay. Well, if you do the biopic, fine. I don't know if there's necessarily a market for a Khabib biopic, to be honest with you. There's a market for a Conor McGregor biopic. That's for sure. Of course,
I know who he is.
Yeah, there you go. And that's why there's a market for that one, because Steve, who isn't necessarily the biggest MMA watcher, knows who Conor is. So, Alex Shawshak's in here. Alex, she's a big fan of the Cinephiles, brother. She can join the episode on screen, Alex. The chat is Wiley has put it in the chat, so if you want to come join. She asks, what are your favorite environmentalist horror movies? Favorite movie posters of all time as well. Ooh, what is environmentalist horror? What does that mean?
It's a little known subgenre.
Right there.
So I'm not exactly sure what the definition is, but the first one that pops to mind is the original Planet of the Apes.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of because I'm assuming this is sort of where the world goes crazy.
Yeah. What about 1978's Invasion of the Body Snatchers? I would do that version over the original. Right? Isn't that an environmentalist horror? Because it's like this thing that grows in the plants and gets in people's lungs. I don't know. I'm guessing.
I mean, to me, it sounds like, and maybe this is from Alex.
Alex Stashak.
Maybe she can give us a definition or what her answers are. But like there's things like Soylent Green and,
That's a good one too. Let me see a couple of super chats, and then we'll jump in with people who are waiting to talk to us live. Paul wants to know, what's our next Star Trek film? First Contact?
My gut, knowing you, is we do Star Trek 6 before First Contact.
Star Trek 6, Undiscovered Country. Another film that is now all of a sudden prescient. Very interesting film. And quietly is my second favorite Star Trek film.
But First Contact it's probably the next one on the list that I think is good.
Yeah. After that, yeah, and then we'll probably tackle the 1999 one at some point, I would imagine. I mean, sorry, the 2009 one.
I totally like it. Yeah, we talked about doing it last year, and then we talked about doing it with Mance, and then it fell through.
I love that movie. Secular Monk says, loved your two-parter on 2001. Speaking of Mance was great too. Yeah, I mean, 2001 is maybe the episode I'm the most proud of because all of us brought our A game intellectually in that two-parter that we did with Scott. Scott had pages and pages of notes. And that's the thing about Mance, the people maybe not know when they're listening or hearing us with Mance. Mance comes prepared. He loves our show, and Scott doesn't dole out compliments. As jovial as he is, he doesn't dole out authentic compliments that often and that deeply. And he is such a big fan of our show, and he always tells us how he loves talking movies with us because he doesn't get to do this in his daily life as deeply as we talk about it on the CineFiles. So it's always, for me, I don't know about Steve, for you, Steve, for me, it's always a personal honor that he says that.
100%. Because it's so sincere. He's come in every time he's come in and said, fellas, I just, you could do the impression. But
I love the show.
I love, just tell me when to come back. And I literally just emailed him a couple of days ago and said, okay, what's the next movie? And I don't know we don't know what it is yet, but
we have a 200th episode coming out soon. We got something really great planned, and you guys are going to love it, I think, if it comes off. Chris Taylor says, if we pull it off, the Cinephiles episode of Major League will be soon. Kay Cannon is joining us as our special guest on that episode of Major League. So she followed up from League of Their Own into that. One last super chat.
Can I say one thing? Here's a little secret. It was almost this week.
Yes, it was almost this week.
And then we made a last-minute change.
Yeah. We had to make some changes that worked, I think, for what we're doing. Dalton Johnson said, just making sure I understand, both Rocha's and Steve's taste on the Cinephiles won't do any David Lynch films. It's one of my favorite podcasts. Yeah, I'm not a David Lynch guy. I don't know if Steve is, but I just don't like his movies. And no offense to anybody who does. I'm like, okay, I get it, but it's just not for me.
I've had very strange experiences with his movies. I would do one. I'm not sure which one. I think they're interesting, but here's the thing. If John and I got to agree, and there've been movies that he's wanted to do that I've said, it's really not my thing, man. And vice versa. Like I remember seeing Blue Velvet and it messed me up. I remember seeing Wild at Heart twice, once with one group of friends where I just laughed my ass off and thought it was the funniest thing in the world. And once with a different group of people where I went, this is the most upsetting, disturbing movie I've ever seen. So that's like, he is an interesting filmmaker.
Yeah. I think Wild at Heart is the one I would do if I was going to do a Lynch one, because I actually like that one. And Nicolas Cage is good in that film. Laura Dern is good in that film.
Yeah.
And Diane Lane is creepy as F in that film.
Yeah.
I think that one I would do. Blue Velvet, I could be talked into Blue Velvet, but sometimes I think Lynch is showing off how weird he is. Look how weird I am.
Absolutely.
And Mulholland Drive, people love that movie. I'm like, this is just him showing off. He's I don't know, he's masturbating with his intelligence on film, and it bothers me when I can see through that. And other people, maybe I don't want to disrespect other people's feelings about it. Just for me personally, that's how I feel. But I don't begrudge you feeling differently about him or his movies if they move you and affect you positively.
Here's my bias, and people who listen to the show know this. I'm a story guy. Yeah. I like a story. Good storytelling is what excites me the most. And so weird for the sake of weird is not my thing.
Yeah.
Although sometimes I can admire some really weird movies. That's not where my brain goes. It's not how I work.
One last super chat. We'll jump into these live people. Dalton Johnson also follows up, says, is there a Patreon tier for requests, Steve?
Yes, there is. And maybe, John, this is a good time to announce what our new tiers will be, because I have them right here in front of me. And this is our new Patreon tiers. Yeah. And they are coming out, I think, on July 1st, officially. Yeah. They are tier number 1, known as Valued Investor. $1 gets you our eternal gratitude. Thank you very much. You get paid $1 a month, and we really, really appreciate it.
Yes, we do.
Tier number 2 is for $5 behind the scenes. you will get access to our CineFiles shorts, which is every week we're putting out these shorts that we've talked about earlier on this thing. We will give you advanced information on upcoming episodes, so you will know, at least to some degree, what our schedule is. We'll do an on-air thank you. Oh, that's actually not supposed to be here. I don't want to do the on-air. Oh, that's not supposed to be on the list. We've got to take that out.
Take that out.
Yeah. Sorry. Let's see. The Cinephiles will follow you on social media. And there might be access to some special giveaways like signed photos from guests and stuff.
By the way, Cinephiles meaning the actual Cinephiles account, not us personally. I want to make sure
exactly. The Cinephiles social media on Twitter and Instagram.
Right here.
Yes.
Keep going.
So tier number 3, called It's Who You Know. Looks like you know how this town works. We're impressed. These are clever tier titles. You get everything in tier 2, plus you get to ask questions about upcoming movies. So for $10, we'll let you know what the film is, and you can ask specific questions about the film before we record it. And so your questions might be included in the actual episode. You will be allowed to suggest topics for Cinephile shorts. So at the $5 tier, you can listen to them, but for the $10 tier, you can suggest topics. And we're going to do something we've never done before, which is, we release all these multi-part episodes. You will have access to combined versions. So instead of getting, 3 2-hour episodes for Lawrence of Arabia, you could actually listen to it as one 6-hour episode. You want me to keep reading them?
Right there, tier 4.
Okay, tier 4. Development deal. The Cinephiles likes your moxie. You've got taste in class, and we want to hear your suggestions. You get everything from tier 3. Plus, this is the level at which you get to suggest 5 films. We'll pick one to put on the show, one lifetime pick. And you got to be on for 6 months to get this. And this is why, as I mentioned earlier, we just couldn't handle the number of picks we were getting. And we hated the idea that we were disappointing people.
Letting people down.
Yeah, that's not what we want to do. And each month we'll have votes for potential future movies. So John and I always have these conversations, and we're thinking, should we do this one or this one? Maybe to honor our director, or to celebrate a certain moment like Halloween or a holiday film. And we're going to put those out for this tier level to vote on. Tier 5, this is $35. Studio executive. They say you can't buy art, but they weren't talking about studio executives. And the studio exec always got to have their say. You get everything on tier 4, plus we will record a short conversation with you on your favorite movie topic to be played on an upcoming episode of the Cinephiles. And this is the big one. $50.
And again, for that one, minimum 6-month membership to get qualified for that. Yeah, go ahead.
This is $50. Baby, you're a star. We hope you're ready for your close-up, because at $50 a month, you are one of our most important cinephiles, and we want to get to know you better. All the content up to this point, plus each quarter, Steve and John will join you for a private online Q&A. And you'll get access to the show like no other fan, and answers to the questions that only real stars get to know. So those are our new tiers.
Yeah. Good stuff. You'll come join it. You see right above Steve's head, that's where it's at, patreon.com/the Cinephiles. So let's bring in some people, Steve, to talk to them live. If you're ready.
I am ready.
All right, let's do it. Let me bring the bigger, the thinner graphic up. Oh, Alan Smithy, great director. Alan Smithy's in here. Alan,
I love
Smithy,
your work.
Yes. Turn your microphone on, Alan. There we go.
I knew that. I'm the director. Oh, wait a minute. Hey, nice to meet you, Steve. How are you doing?
Good. Nice to meet you, Alan.
All right. And what's up, Rocha? How are
Alan?
you? Are you doing all right? Everything's good?
We'll find out in 2 or 3 days. Yeah, I had that. For those of you who don't know, don't follow me on social media, I had the COVID test today. That swab went right up both of my nostrils, 10 feet deep into my body. It is maddening, but it's 10 seconds long. Just hold on to the sides of the table, and you'll be fine. My girlfriend and I both got COVID tested today as a precautionary measure, because we haven't been feeling well over the last few days, and we checked some things, and the symptoms kind of led us to this point. So we got tested today, and hopefully we'll find out that we're okay in the next 2 or 3 days. So, yeah, thank you for asking.
You're looking good. You're looking and sounding good. So, I heard you talking to Wiley earlier saying, don't become a dick director. And I got to say, don't become a dick director, but you can always take the advice of dick directors. You know what I mean?
Fair. That's a good point.
Now, I wonder if this is good advice, too. And Steve, it sounds like you've taught some film classes. So
Yes.
In film school, they sometimes set parameters on your films, and I used to find creative ways around those parameters. You don't want to blatantly break the rules, but if they tell you don't use dialogue, you can have a idea where the character becomes telekinetic and speaks with their thoughts, you know? And that worked just fine, you know? What do you think?
So I had a student who wanted to do exactly that, and I told them no. Here's what I think. So on the one hand, I am 100% for people bending the rules. If I didn't, there were so many things where I bent the rules to do the things that I wanted to do. If you took Werner Herzog's 1 week film school, the first thing he does in that class is teach people how to forge documents and pick locks. So to some degree, I think filmmakers, particularly filmmakers with no money, which is most of us, have to be a little bit outside the rules. But here's what I would say, at least where I teach. There are specific reasons for what some of those limitations are. And there are certain lessons to be learned with each of them. And so by skipping them, you skip the lesson. And in particular, one of the hardest things to learn in filmmaking is show, don't tell, is that it's a visual medium. And by doing the telepathic, I'm hearing everybody's thoughts, and this is I'm not saying about your film. I'm sure your film was life altering, but at the student whose script I rejected, it literally would have ended up being 2 people sitting in a room doing nothing while you listened to the things they were thinking telepathically at each other.
Oh,
I said nope. Yeah.
Now, I did one where it was like 7 minutes long, and it only had one moment with a couple bits of dialogue that made a point, which was basically that the character was really Jesus.
Oh, interesting.
You always got to make a Jesus-themed movie in film school. Come on.
Everyone does.
A messianic film. No matter what your religion is, throw in some religion in your student film occasionally. You know what I mean?
It's good advice.
All right.
I like it. Thanks, Smithy. It's good to see you, my man.
Hey, I had some training with Clark Wolf the other day. Quite good. And she's totally cool. And, I didn't have to answer any trivia questions, so that was kind of daunting. But, hey, nice.
Are you staying on for next month or no? For this month or no?
I had to cancel, and then I saw that you're the guy coming up next after I know.
Those of you who are get ready. If you're at that tier, the $250 level and above over there at Schmodown, I will be the coach for the month. Now that you got your hand held and your diapers cleaned, now it's time for some real training with the Outlaw. So get ready.
I'm telling you, got to throw some questions at these people, see how they do, you know?
More than that, I'm going to make them do push-ups and burpees while I ask them questions. That's how it works.
All right. Well, congratulations, Wiley, and nice to meet you, Steve.
Nice meeting you.
Take care, Alan.
Later.
Bye, bud. Always fun. Alan's been a great addition to the show over the last few weeks. He's just been fantastic. Such a great name. Brennan, what's going on?
Hey, hello.
How are you? Welcome to the Outlaw Nation.
Hello, Steve. Big fan.
Oh, thanks so much.
I absolutely love the Cinephiles.
Thank you.
Your 2001 episode was great.
That's a good one.
And Wiley, if you're listening, I've seen The Color of Money. It was okay. Okay, my question is, with historical films, when do they need to be historically accurate? And when is it permissible to violate historical accuracy?
Can I say one thing real quick, Steve? I appreciate the question you're asking, Brennan, because it's specific. You're not looking for generalization. You're asking in what and what cases do you need to adhere to the actual story, and what cases can you take creative license?
Yeah.
So it's a very difficult question, and I don't think there is one right answer. There are incredibly great historical films which are completely inaccurate. And there are films that are historical that have no intention of being accurate.
That's true.
So for instance, a movie like Gladiator, you're not watching it for it to be accurate. That's not really what it's about. And certainly a movie like Inglourious Bastards is not a movie that anyone expects to be accurate, because that's in fact what he's doing. He's intentionally messing with history.
Or Shakespeare and Amadeus.
Yeah.
Or 300.
Yeah. So there's a sliding scale here in terms of what we're trying to accomplish. I think there are some things where so I like history, and so the first thing I think you should do is do the research. And when you decide to vary it from, and it's interesting because we're doing a historical movie right now on the Cinephiles this week.
I think I know what it is.
And we talk, I felt I had to go do a lot of the history research to find out how historically accurate it is.
Well,
and they made a lot of choices that they made for what I think are really good reasons. Is that in particular, there's one we're going to get in part 2 where they combine something on the timeline, which had they not done it, they would have killed the drama in the movie. So it's not accurate, but it's more dramatic. And that's the hard thing, is you're always trying to balance out, how much, because to be clear, no historical movie is accurate. It's not possible.
No.
Okay. This is not history class. Even documentaries are not necessarily accurate.
Yeah, it's true.
It's just how much. And then the other question is at what point do I violate something important about history? At what point am I lying? Am I using the inaccuracies to tell a better story, to in some way tell a bigger truth, or am I using it to conceal something that's false? That's a different thing. That's my opinion.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's 100% accurate, and it all depends on what the point of your film is. What's the point of your film, right? Braveheart was just about showcasing this story of, overcoming this tyrannical power and fighting for your independence, fighting for your freedom, right? And at the time, those kinds of films were really a rarity, an oddity there at that time. So it stood out in a powerful way. But then you look at "I'm Not Really Here," that Bob Dylan biopic.
Yes.
4 or 5 different people play Bob Dylan, and that's all just about like kind of exploring his Bob Dylan's universality in multiple different people at multiple different times and situations. So I love that aspect of it all as well. So it all depends on what you're trying to do. Like 300 is just an awesome badass dude.
Yeah, it's just meant to be ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. It's not supposed to be necessarily historically accurate. Even Apocalypse Now, which is a historical movie, and the fact that it's about Vietnam, the Vietnam War.
Yeah, it's not a true story.
It's based on Heart of Darkness. So it all depends on what you're trying to do with the movie overall. And when you're not adherent to an important story, I think that's where the mistakes get made. Like if Malcolm X was all of a sudden in space, like that would not make any sense, right? So you have to figure out what you're trying to do.
They'll put nothing past Spike Lee.
Yeah, right, that's true.
I will say one more thing is that it's always interesting to check it out. Like there's some movies, like the most egregious one maybe is The Sound of Music. Is considered to be a great film. I actually really like The Sound of Music. I don't think John likes it.
I haven't seen it. So
it literally has nothing whatsoever to do with what really happened with the Von Trapp family singer.
Other than the name.
Other than the name. It is complete fiction. But and also this is like, I think as John said, how important is this history? Does it matter that we mess with the Von Trapp families? They are not a pillar of history. So the fact that we mess with them, not such a big deal.
There you go. Oh, thanks, Brendan. Appreciate the question, man.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
It's good to see you all, man. That's Brendan. He's awesome. All right. We're going to bring in a mainstay of the Outlaw Nation show. I'm a little worried about it because I never know what to expect from this man. But we're going to try to hold on tight. And that is Calvin. What's up, Calvin? How are you doing,
What's up? How cool is that Brendan guy? I swear to God.
He is.
I swear to God. I swear to God. What was it from Greece? Is it from Greece?
Sure.
I swear to God. Anyway, that Brendan guy is fucking awesome.
Yep.
Anyway, shit, I done forgot what I was going to say. Oh, I do kind of remember what I was going to say.
Okay.
I know this. I'm sorry, guys. I haven't listened to CineFiles. I will have to check that out. I've checked that out.
I mean, breaking out a new. Don't ever apologize for maybe trying something new for us. So
I mean, I will have to correct that mistake. I listen to all your shit, Rocha. You know, I love you, Rocha. You know that. But,
Calvin, thank you.
Yeah, we're 5 horsemen, all that. But I'll have to check that out. But I was going to tell him that I love Up too, man. That first 15 minutes, Jesus Christ. That first 15 minutes, it's going to kill you.
Oh,
you know what I'm saying?
Some of the best filmmaking I've ever seen. It absolutely destroys me. I've ever seen. It absolutely destroys me.
I mean, that's going to kill you. Well, I did have a question. What?
All right, Calvin. Do you know what it is, or I'm gonna drop you out, and then you can, if you remember it, give me a thumbs up.
No, well, I'm going to give you a question. It's kind of industry standard question.
Industry standard. Oh, all right.
Industry standard question. No, I'm just saying it's just a regular question. But I wanted to tell him too about the moment that I always cried at, but I done forgot it. But anyway, favorite Scorsese movie. That's what I'm saying. It's an industry standard question. Favorite Scorsese movies.
It's so there are movies of his that I think are great that I don't necessarily want to watch a lot.
I can tell you mine.
Yeah, tell us. What is it?
My favorite Scorsese movie, a lot of people say Goodfellas or whatever. Mine is Taxi Driver.
You should listen to our episode on Taxi Driver, Calvin, if that's one of your favorite.
Oh my God, you have an episode on Taxi Driver?
Oh yeah, it's a two-parter. It's a big one.
I didn't know that. See,
I think Taxi Driver is amazing. That's what I was just going to say. I don't want to watch it all the time.
Right.
Taxi Driver is absolutely
it's a hard
incredible.
movie to get through.
It's hard. Raging Bull is fantastic and difficult.
Yeah.
We were talking about little known movies. You know, a movie of his that I think is really good that no one watches.
What? Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore?
No, but I do think that's a good movie. Kundun.
Oh yeah, the one
Kundun,
about
which is
Dalai Lama.
It's a film about the
never
Dalai
even
Lama.
heard of that.
It is completely unlike any Scorsese movie you've ever seen. It's about the Dalai Lama and Buddhism, and it is the scores by Philip Glass, and it is a really different, interesting film, I think.
Okay.
Well, I will tell you, I like Taxi Driver because I like the story of Travis Bickle and what he goes through with everything. It's a character study to me.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And
Absolutely.
then with him with what's her name?
Sybil Shepherd.
Yeah. You know what I mean? The whole arc with that and everything like that. I mean, it's a master class, son. It's a master class in filmmaking.
Totally. It's sort of like what we were saying about Clockwork Orange in a different way, is that it makes you feel a lot of stuff that you don't know how to feel about. Because on some weird level, and I bet you feel this, Calvin, is that you like the guy. You like Travis Bickle.
But you're not supposed to.
But he's he's just, literally just a killer. He's a crazy person.
Yes.
And yet you're drawn to him. And I think that's what makes that movie so powerful and involving.
And that's another thing that I like about what I forgot that you brought that up about Clockwork Orange. Clockwork Orange is one of Kubrick's greats to me. You know what I mean?
Sure.
That's one of his greatest works he's ever done, in my opinion, because it hit me at a time when I was a teenager. So it hit me at a time that, I was just like rebelling against the system, all that stuff. And I've seen that movie and I was just like, okay, you know what I mean? I got it. I kind of got it.
Yeah, you walk around with a codpiece in your pants. Yeah, I get it.
No, I'm not saying that, Rocha. You put words in my mouth. But no, I'm just saying. But I see what you're saying though. But I mean that's the way I felt at that time. And even that's another thing that is so crazy about it, because it was made in a different time. It was made in the 70s. You know what I'm saying? And I was a teenager in the 90s.
Right.
So, but I felt exactly like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You know what, Calvin? You know what I'd love you to do? When we're done with this Outlaw Nation, I want you to go right to the Cinephiles and download the 2-part episode on Taxi Driver.
Right.
And you could download. We did Goodfellas too, if you want another Scorsese, and listen to them, and then you'll have to let us know what you thought.
Yeah, that would
What
be
do you
the smart
think
thing.
about what do you think about Goodfellas? What do you think about? I mean, that's probably one of my favorite movies of all time.
I can't tell you, Calvin. You got to listen to the episode.
Yeah,
Oh
Calvin,
my God! trying to promote y'all shit.
Yeah, son. Yeah, of
Jesus
course.
Christ.
It's not bad. It's a good show. All right, Calvin. It's always good to see you, man.
All right, man. I'll see you next week. Hopefully.
Much love, brother. Much love.
Nice meeting you, Calvin.
Calvin's hilarious. All right, Adrian, you've been going insane, waiting to come on the show. I see you moving around and everything like that. What's up, man?
I'm sorry, John. It's just it's like 4:05 in the morning in the UK, and I want to go back to bed.
Oh my God!
I appreciate you staying up, brother. Thank you so much. What do you want to ask, my man?
I heard you and Steve talking about the Batman films, and funny enough, I was watching Red Planet tonight with Val Kilmer. My question is, I want your honest opinion on Joel Schumacher's Batman Forever and Batman and Robin.
Honest opinion, Steve. Do you want to start with this?
One is bad, and the other is horrendously awful. That's my honest opinion.
I remember liking Batman Forever when I saw it in the theater at that time when I went to go see it because I had a thing for Nicole Kidman pretty much at that time, and I thought that I love Val Kilmer coming off of everything he'd done up to that point. I was such a fan of his taking over Batman. I thought it was going to be a more introspective, interesting Batman. And we got the Joel Schumacher Batman. And I don't blame Joel Schumacher. If you read those New York Times articles that came out after his passing recently, they talked about how the studio wanted this and they hired Joel to do this. And Joel, being a former designer, a production designer himself, he designed this world that they wanted a more homogenized, a more kid-friendly Batman than the one Tim Burton had presented, which, by the way, is so funny to now look in retrospect and think Batman 89 or Batman Returns is dark by any definition, but it was dark in comparison. But these two films came out and they were more softer, more lighter. But there are people who defend these films, Adrian, just like people there who defend the prequels for Star Wars. There are people who love Batman Forever and love Batman and Robin. It's just that Steve and I are not necessarily those people. I tried rewatching Batman Forever when HBO Max dropped, and I just was like, it's not my jam. And I've never finished Batman and Robin. I've only got an hour into it and stopped every single time around that motorcycle chase or race because I cannot stand what they're doing with it.
Can I add two things to it? The first thing is I don't think personally that the problem with any Batman movie has ever been the actor playing Batman. I think every actor who played Batman that we're talking about was good or could have been good. Yeah. Is that Michael Keaton? It's a great Batman. I think Val Kilmer could have been a fantastic Batman. I think it was great casting. I think he was given terrible material. I think George Clooney could have been a good Batman. I think he's given terrible material. I think Ben Affleck could be a really good, very different kind of Batman, but I don't like the material he had.
Yeah, that's fair.
Interrupt you both there. My problem is all the actors played, in my view, Batman. No, sorry, got that wrong. Bruce Wayne. All right. It's just when it came to playing the alter ego Batman, I thought Val Kilmer was terrible and George Clooney was just plain awful. That's my opinion on it. And like I say, when these films come out, I was a teenager. I was about 15, 16 years old, and I watched them for the first time. Loved it, but as I've got older, carrying watching them, let's just say I class them as swear words in my house now.
the other big one, and this came up in those movies that has been repeated over and over and over again, that's just terrible in most of these movies. Who came up with the idea that we need to have multiple villains? Like having, and what happens is you have a great villain like Two-Face, one of the great Batman villains of all time. And A, he's poorly done, and then B, we don't give the time to tell that story, and now you've wasted Two-Face. It's like, and we've seen this over and over again in some of the Spider-Man movies, is that no, we need more villains. It's like, no, do one really well. Tell one great story. Don't try to tell multiple stories and tell them poorly. That's not a good idea.
That's the thing. I love Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones, but
sure,
they just were wasted in Batman Batman Forever.
Yep.
Jim Carrey's a great comic genius, and he goes and plays Riddler, not for him. Tommy Lee Jones goes and plays Two-Face. I think Aaron Harcourt in The Dark Knight played Two-Face better than him. And
but both of those guys,
Jones is a genius actor, isn't he?
But I think both of those guys, I think Jim Carrey could have been a great Riddler. I think Tommy Lee Jones could have been a great Two-Face. Yeah. It's all the material they were handed.
Yeah, and
John was saying it's all cartoonish, isn't it?
Right, which is what Warner Brothers wanted. It's not Schumacher's fault. This is what Warner Brothers wanted.
I'll never go doing Schumacher. That's all.
No. I mean, if he had only done these two movies and every other one of his other movies weren't that great, then you could say, well, Schumacher wasn't that good of a director. But there are multiple movies from different genres that he was damn good at directing. And so for him to be unfairly vilified for these two movies when he collected a paycheck and the studio gave him what the studio wanted, I think was always been an unfair thing for Joel to suffer. And I appreciate the fact that now people coming out with these great think pieces about him and giving him his just due. Unfortunately, it took him passing for that to happen. But so many people have come out and done that. And I think that's a great thing for a director.
I heard you say that on what I think it was your morning show with Alex Shawshank.
Yeah.
Oh, was it a CN? I can't remember, but it was one of them too. You said that same thing you just said then, John.
Yeah, that's true. I like that. Love that guy.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you, gentlemen. I'm going to go back to bed now and sleep for 2 more hours.
Thank you. Thanks for staying up.
And Adrian,
I don't know being asleep, Steve. I woke up about 3 o'clock. I put my phone on and I saw Outlaw Nation. So I thought I spoke to John before. I don't know if he remembers.
Of course, Adrian. Yeah, you were in a different room when we spoke. I think your bedroom upstairs. And then
my mum and dad. I still live at home with my mum and dad because of my disability. So my dad's asleep. He's got to get up for work in the morning. So I thought I'd better come down and have a chat with you down there.
Well, thank you for taking the time, Adrian. We appreciate it very much.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your evening in America. I'm going back to bed now.
Yeah, sweet dreams, brother, man.
See you later.
Love that guy. Always love when we get UK guests, Steve. I'm always a big fan.
Sure.
You know, I'm a fan of the UK, so it's always great to get him in here. All right, we should probably let me see if I've got any more Streamlabs or Super Chats before we wrap this thing up here. You've been incredible to be on this long, Steve. Chris Taylor sent us one. It's gone past the chat, so I can't bring it up, but he says Deer Hunter, I think, would be a great episode. Yeah, Steve, the Deer Hunter?
Haven't seen it in a long time. It's a rough movie. Certainly a great one. It certainly brings us into a bunch of great actors, a great director, tons of stuff, obviously, to talk about. So, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, we're heading towards our 200th episode.
Yeah.
There's so many movies we haven't done.
Like I said earlier, we just barely scratched the surface, and we've done this thing for 4 years. So that tells you how much there is for us to explore as a cinephiles. And directing-wise, is Cimino a great director?
Let's
take a look at his. He's only done 10 films, Steve, or 8 films. Thunderbolt and Lightfoot, The Deer Hunter, Heaven's Gate, Year of the Dragon, which is one of my quietly underappreciated films from the 80s with Mickey Rourke and John Lone. The Sicilian, which was terrible. Desperate Hours, The Sun Chaser, and then some segment from To Each His Own Cinema. So maybe a one-hit wonder director with The Deer Hunter? Maybe.
That's kind of what I think. I mean, the first of all, and we say it all the time, directing's really hard. It's really, really tough. And even the greatest directors in the world have made movies that aren't good. Yeah. But yeah, there's people. I think he hit lightning in a bottle. He hit this moment in time with that film that struck a chord. He had great actors. He had a great script, and it's a powerful film. You know.
Yeah. Michael,
people don't get make.
It's true. It's true. Michael Knipp, I don't agree. It only takes one great film to make a great director, right? No, I don't agree with that at all. Consistency for me is the key. If you were to die after you made your great film, then okay, you're a great director. But not if you're still making films and none of them match up. I mean, Wells, you could argue Citizen Kane's his greatest film, but it's not. But that he's a great director because of the other films he did afterwards. So to me, it's not just one.
But how many great films? I mean, how many great films does it take? Because I don't think Orson has that many great films.
How dare you? On my show, you're going to say that on my show?
I think his great films. So I don't think Mr. Arcaden's a great film. No, I don't think this. Yeah, I don't think Stranger is a great film, although it has things in it. I think the final mirror scene in Lady from Shanghai is amazing, but I don't think that's a great film. You know,
Okay.
I think Ambersons is a great film,
Yes.
but it's so flawed because the ending's destroyed. I think Touch of Evil is a great film.
Touch of Evil is a great film. Yeah, absolutely. I would put his Othello in there. I love his Othello.
I like it a lot. I really admire it, but I don't know if I put
What
it
about
in
his
there.
Macbeth? Do you not like his Macbeth?
I do like his Macbeth.
Yeah. F for Fake? What about F for Fake?
I think it's a very interesting, odd movie, but do I think it's a great film? No.
All right. I think there's enough there. In my mind.
Of course, he's a great director. Of course, he's a great director. I was just, all his question is like,
Third Man. Third Man is another one, right?
but
The
he
Third
didn't
Man?
direct
Oh,
it.
he didn't direct it. That's right. Carol Reed directed
Carol
it.
Reed.
So, yeah. Oh, Chimes at Midnight. Absolutely.
Yes.
I love Chimes at Midnight. So I think there's enough for me for bills. Heaven's Gate wasn't that bad. I don't know. It got a Criterion collection. So fair point, Brennan. Fair point. You know?
When is it going to be that people will say it must be good? It got a Cinephiles episode.
Hopefully soon, Steve.
That
Maybe
should be
one
the-
day. That's our
That
goal.
should be the standard.
I like that. Yeah, I agree. Let me see if I've got any more Streamlabs before we wrap us up, my man. All right. Ryan Chandler said, thanks again, Rocha. Nice to meet Steve. I'll check out the Cinephiles indefinitely. Speaking of Joel Schumacher, I love The Lost Boys, one of the few horror comedies that works. Kiefer Sutherland's greatest role aside from Jack Bauer. Have fun, guys. Do you agree?
For whatever reason, that is my era of films. It was filmed in Santa Cruz, just south of my, grew up in the Bay Area, so that's real close to me. It wasn't my movie. I didn't watch it a lot in that era, and having watched it since, I think if I had watched, it should have been. It's like we talked about with you and Highlander, is that I just didn't. It wasn't one of mine. It's good. I like it, but I don't love it.
All right. Fair point. I enjoy it still every once in a while watching it, but it does feel dated, my man. I mean, anything where a half-naked, muscly dude is playing the saxophone on stage, you had a hard time for me liking the film overall in that way. All right, Steve, we should wrap up here. Over 2 hours rather with you, and I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're a busy guy. Let's plug everything you got going on. We didn't get a chance to talk about your book. Talk about your book real quick. What is this book that you've got coming out that you've been working on recently? You've announced it on the Cinephiles a couple times. We talked about it. What is this book for people who are watching?
So it's called The Director's Toolbox, and it is a book on directing film that really, I think there are a lot of books about filmmaking, but they either tend to be sort of the biography of a filmmaker, like Rebel Without a Crew, or, people talking about their process, or Adventures in the Screen Trade from William Goldman. There's those kinds of books, or they're books that are really in the weeds about lenses and editing software and budgets and things like that. And what my book is going to be is taking you through the entire creative process from conception through post-production and sound in the mix, but focusing entirely on how we use these tools: screenwriting, working with actors, set design, costume design, cinematography, staging, all of those things to support the story. That every choice that a director has to make must exist in support of the story that they're trying to tell. That that is the big guidepost, and to bring everything back at each stage of the creative process to that idea is the book that I'm working on, and it's gotten bigger and bigger as everything I do is. I'm probably a third of the way through it. I've written about 150 pages, and I don't have a publisher yet. So if people out there in the Outlaw Nation are a literary agent or a publisher, you can reach out to me.
Yeah, well, I can probably get you contacts, because I've had 4 friends write books over the last 2 years with a publisher who has published their books. The one on Star Wars, one on the amount of superheroes that have been military members in the comics, and how that connects to military members in real life, or members of the military in real life. Alicia Malone has published a couple of books about women in film and the history of women in film back in the 40s and 50s. And 30s and all of that, their legacy. So let me get a contact from those guys, and then I'll pass it on to you, Stephen. Maybe you might have a publisher. They're always looking for things.
That'd be fantastic
in that way. So there you go.
And I know it's
Back in the Future, the one that Brad Gilmore did as well. That same publisher. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just saying, I know that Wiley's been nice enough to put it up in the stream. My film, The Assistants, which stars Joe Mantegna, Jane Seymour, and Stacy Keach, which is basically a bunch of Hollywood assistants conning their own movie into existence. It's a caper film with a great young ensemble cast, and that is available on iTunes to rent or to purchase. And my Great White Shark documentary, Great White Shark Beyond the Cage of Fear is available for free on Amazon Prime. I'm very, very proud of both films, and I would love to have you all go take a look at them right now.
There you go. Both films directed there by Steve Morris, and you can follow Steve at SR Morris there on Twitter. And then what is your handle on Instagram?
It's SR Morris 1.
SR Morris 1. Someone took SR Morris.
Yeah.
And so you had to go SR Morris 1. But you can follow us and you can listen to us on the CineFiles, which is available. You got 4 years of episodes to catch up on, and we're still doing it there. So wherever you download podcasts, the Cine, CINE dash files, FILES, our play on words there, because we go deep into these films. And in our minds, we kind of have a file cabinet full of folders that we go in and pick out movies and talk about. Steve, thank you so much for taking the time, dude. It was great talking with you. The time flew by, and I hope you had a good time talking with our fans here on the Outlaw Nation.
I had a great time. It's a very, very friendly country, and I would love to return to the shores of the Outlaw Nation sometime soon.
Thank you so much. All right, Steve, I'm going to drop you out, and we'll talk in just a minute. But thank you so much for being a part of the show again, and please follow Steve and everything he's doing. And much love, brother.
Thank you.
Peace. All right, well, there you go. That was Steve Morris on the show with us. Wiley, that was pretty fun, wouldn't you say?
It was a great episode. It's one I've been waiting for a long time, as you know.
Yeah, I know. You're a big fan of Steve, big fan of Cinephiles. I hope enough people enjoyed it and got a lot out of it. Steve is a fantastic guest, and we're about to jump on and do another episode of the Cinephiles after this. So I got to wrap it up here myself. Normally, I'd stay on for a post-show talking with everybody and bringing some people in to talk to me live or talk to us live. But tonight I cannot do that. I've got to jump on and finish part 2 of a movie we're tackling on the Cinephiles with Steve. But overall, I thought it was a fun show. It went quickly. I didn't know what, with Steve, I don't have to plan anything out. I have a rough outline, and then we talk about it. And Steve is such a great conversationalist that it always goes in interesting directions, smart directions, intelligent directions, but we always leave room for jokes and humor and fun. And I thought that came through tonight. Don't you think?
Yeah, I honestly, this is by far the best episode because personally, with all the content nowadays, movies are getting shut out, in my opinion. They're not being talked about. They are being like, oh, yeah, good movie, fine. It shows that you're on like SEN. They don't really do that as much as they used to. What your show does is you really get into that. This is the first episode I've seen in months that's done it. The chat was active talking about movies like, oh, yeah, that movie. Like, I haven't seen that and forever. So personally, this is probably my favorite episode you have done so far because I miss that, that's what the Cinephiles does is it brings you in there. Like, I didn't get to say this, but the Rushmore episode, never saw the movie. I listened to that episode twice before I saw the movie for the first time. Okay. And now it's one of my favorite movies of all time. And I owe that all to you guguys, which is crazy. But guys, seriously, check out this podcast. It has seriously changed my life. If you are done with movies right now, you're like, oh, I can't anymore. This show will get you that back up. I strongly do it. If they're fully in movies, then watch the top 10. Like they do both there. But I really, John Rocha, like honestly, you have changed my life, and the shows that you produce and the people you get is just extraordinary. And this was a perfect example of that tonight.
Yeah, it was very kind that Steve was able to come on the show and take the time because, we got another 2 or 3 hours of talking about a movie afterwards. And I asked him, just a few days ago, and I was hoping he'd say yes, and I'm glad he said yes. I almost didn't do a show this week because we're planning to, take off for a few days to Big Bear to kind of unwind and relax for July 4th weekend. But I thought it would be fun to have Steve on the shows. We've got these new tiers we're dropping here. July 1st is tomorrow. We've got a movie we're dropping, part 1 of a really patriotic movie we're dropping this weekend. So I thought it was the perfect time to bring Steve on to kind of talk about everything and the Cinephile stuff as well. So you're right. I mean, we do get caught up with the Schmodown stuff, and that does bring a lot of views and does bring a lot of attention for our show and does get a lot of Streamlabs and Super Chats and all of that rolling through. So sometimes it's good to just take a step back because one thing I love is movies and talk about movies with somebody, and that'll be fun. Like maybe next week we'll have on Kaiser or somebody like that, and Kaiser and I will talk sports for 2.5 hours. Maybe you won't be be into it. Maybe we'll talk sports movies or we'll talk movies. But with Smets, my intention was to do that. But when Kaiser came in, it became a completely different show. But with Kalinowski, we did talk about Zack Snyder's Justice League and Michael Keaton and Batman, all of that. So I do try to make it as much movie oriented as possible, but sometimes it'll veer into Schmodown, and that's the game. And fans enjoy that. Fans love that. So I gotta, cater to both audience for sure. And who knows? Maybe we'll do The Color of Money one day on the Cinephiles, and we'll cover it. And we'll see
it's a nation, Rocha. You're not gonna. It's not gonna be the same thing, and that's the key of the name, the Outlaw Nation. It's what you guide it. You're the moving hand that moves the places and where it goes and everything. So, again, how I got into this whole fandom was movies and how I get it. It's like I've consumed all this other content in the Schmodown for years now, and now it's finally like, you know what? I need to take a break because I'm getting tired of it. I'm getting frustrated at every little mention. So I'm like, I need to step away. Sometimes you just need to step away and consume content. So that's where I'm at right now. But honestly, every show on you are producing is just extraordinary, and it's good stuff.
It's very kind of you. And Wiley's helping me produce this show. He's been fantastic. He just did the graphics and the overlays and everything for the patron show we got dropping tomorrow. By patron, I mean patrons participate. But I'm going to post it for everybody to watch on the YouTube channel here on the Outlaw Nation YouTube channel. Starting next month, those shows will go to the patrons first. Then the week after, or a few days later, they'll be dropped for everybody to enjoy and consume. But if you want to take part in these shows that I have coming up, you can do that at the Patreon. You see down below there, below Wiley, www.patreon.com/John Rocha. We're now doing more shows. The Hangouts have been a blast. We're doing them, the Discord Hangouts on Wednesday nights have been great. The new Friday ones that we're doing on camera on Zoom have been fantastic to hear people's thoughts about everything going on in entertainment and movies in the world and what have you. And you never know where they're going to go. You never know what we're going to talk about. And we've got, a good mix of people involved, a diverse mix of people involved, which I really enjoy as well. So come aboard the Outlaw Nation train. There's a lot of benefits for you to being a part of it, and a lot coming down the road once we get, a little more a little more movement on it that we'll be able to do and spend time and have fun doing as well. So certainly those are all in play. And maybe even doing reviews with one guest every week. One review of a movie with a guest every week could be a fun situation as well. So I'm always open to expanding the Patreon, and I want you all to come be a part of it. And tomorrow is called the OK Corral. That's my debate show where two Outlaw Nation patrons, I think at the $10 level and above, they battle it out over 3 statements. And I choose which side they're going to argue just before we do the debate. And it's about Batman. And tomorrow's is about Batman and some interesting conversations. I'll preview one of the questions: who would win in a fight, Batman Beyond, Terry McGinnis, or Dick Grayson's Nightwing? One of the debates. So Chris Aikman, aka Drunken Prayer, and Colin Martinez are my guests for that. Sean Barreto, my producer on that, comes on to join me on it as well. So look for that tomorrow. And like I said, on the Outlaw Nation, we just dropped that episode, the interview for the deep cut. James Norton, this awesome actor who might become the new James Bond. He's got a new film called Mr. Jones that's out there. Watch this interview. Trust me when I tell you, this is one of the nicest dudes I've ever had the chance to interview. And he is up there working with Joss Whedon, working with so many people. And he was nothing but gracious and fun and jovial with his time. As we talked about his career, we talked about his movie, and we talked about the possibility of Bond. And everyone asks him, would you take the job? Or no, everyone asks him, have you been offered the job? Are you interested in the job? I asked him, because he talked about being a bit of a nomad, would you even want the job of James Bond, which really threw him for a loop? So you got to listen and watch his answer and his reaction to that question as well. It's a fun time, so I can't encourage you enough. Don't forget, if you want, you can watch our Game Time. That is up now with Jay and Winston and I having a blast talking about all the stuff in sports, but also in honor of Cam Newton and his incredibly interesting fashion sense going to New England Patriots. We pull up some old photos of ourselves in high school or early years of college and make fun of ourselves and roast ourselves for about 40 minutes on the show. So it's a blast overall. Don't forget, the Top 10 show is out. The new one is out too for you to listen to. That is out. The Top 10 billion-dollar movies. Top 10 movies that made $1 billion, not adjusted for inflation, just made $1 billion. we count them down there on the top 10 show. All right, Wiley, that's it for me. I got to go. Steve and I are jumping on to do another CineFiles. Thank you to all of you who've been watching us live. Really can't thank you enough for watching us live and being a part of the Outlaw Nation. If you're watching us after we've recorded this live, thank you again for watching it. Please hit that like button. Please leave a comment below. The more comments you leave, the more likes you leave, it elevates the show and elevates the channel on the YouTube algorithm. So I can't thank you enough for doing that. Please do that. It's a one way you can contribute to the show. If you can't be a part of the Patreon, the one way you can help with Outlaw Nation is giving it likes, leaving comments. All of that really, really helps. And subscribing to the channel below. Maybe you're a CineFiles fan and you came over to watch this and you don't know that I've got you got a YouTube channel with all this great content on it. Hit that subscribe button as well. Get us closer to 15,000 subscribers as we move to 20,000 subscribers as well. So I think that's it. Follow me at The Rocha Says on Twitter and on Instagram. Thanks to Wiley Todd. I'm going to drop you out, my man. Thank you again. It's always good to see you. And thanks to all of you one more time for being a part of the Outlaw Nation. And next week, we'll talk to you with we'll come back at you with a new guest and a new live episode of the Outlaw Nation. Have a great July 4th weekend. Take care of yourself. Be safe. Practice social distancing, put on that mask, stay away from fireworks being shot near you, and go and relax and enjoy yourself and maybe detach from a lot of things and just kind of spend some time doing some self-care this weekend. That's really important as well. But please be safe, happy, and healthy this weekend. You know, crazy stuff happens on July 4th, so take care of yourself and be well, because I want to see you back here for another live episode of the Outlaw Nation. Much love to all of you. Take care of yourselves. See you next week.